Hi, I'm Emma. I was filled with excitement as I packed for what I thought would be an amazing family trip with my husband Tom and his family. It was meant to be our first trip together since getting married, and I was excited to join a tradition his family had been doing for years. My relationship with my mother-in-law, Sandra, had always been a bit distant ever since Tom moved in with me, but I hoped this trip would be a chance to finally get closer to her. As I zipped up my suitcase, Tom reassured me, "Don't worry, Emma, everything's taken care of. Mom and Dad always cover the trip expenses for everyone." But, the day before we were set to leave, Sandra asked me to join her in the kitchen for a quick chat. Her tone was casual, but her words were anything but. "Emma, I know you're new to the family, and I just want to clear something up," Sandra said, avoiding eye contact. "You're not really family yet, so you'll need to cover your own expenses for the trip." I felt a cold shock run through me, but Tom said the family expenses were covered. I replied, confused. Sandra waved her hand dismissively. "Well, that's for family. I'm sure you understand. It's only fair since you're still new to this." I tried to keep my cool, though her words stung. "I see. Thanks for letting me know, Sandra." As soon as she left the room, I called Tom, my hands shaking slightly as I held the phone. "Tom, your mom just told me I'm not considered family and have to pay for myself on the trip. Did you know about this?" There was a pause before Tom responded, his voice filled with anger. "What? No, she never mentioned that. That's not right, Emma." We talked it over and decided we couldn't just let this go. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the unfairness of it all. Later that night, as we lay in bed, Sandra's words still weighed heavily on my mind. Tom squeezed my hand and said, "We'll figure this out, Emma, together." Little did Sandra know, we had a plan brewing, a plan that would show her we wouldn't be pushed around or left out. We were ready to take a stand, right in the heart of this family tradition. The next morning at the airport, things were about to take an unexpected turn. As we drove there, the tension in the car was thick. Tom kept glancing at me, his jaw clenched, eyes flicking between the road and me. I could tell he was just as upset as I was, maybe even more. He reached over and squeezed my hand. "We're not letting this slide, Emma. What Mom said isn't okay." I nodded, my stomach in knots. "I know, it feels like she planned this, telling me at the last minute." "Yeah," Tom agreed with a heavy sigh. "The timing is cruel." After a pause, he added, "Listen, I have an idea." I looked at him, my curiosity piqued despite the weight in my chest. "What if we just go somewhere else, just the two of us?" Tom said, his voice cutting through the tension. "We can still go to the airport, but take a different flight." His idea echoed in my mind. At first, I was surprised, but then a feeling of excitement crept in. Was he really suggesting we ditch the family trip and go on our own adventure? "Exactly," Tom said, his eyes lighting up for the first time in days. "Let's book a flight to San Francisco. We've talked about going there forever." San Francisco? I thought about it. It was a bold, spontaneous move. It felt rebellious, but also completely right. It wasn't just about escaping the family vacation. It was about reclaiming our own space as a couple. "Let's do it, Tom. Let's take back our honeymoon phase that she tried to ruin." Tom pulled out his phone and started browsing flights while I drove. We found a flight to San Francisco, leaving at almost the same time as the family's flight to Hawaii. With just a few taps, our secret getaway was booked. "We'll still go to the airport with everyone," Tom planned aloud, like he was solving a puzzle. "We'll check in together, but when it's time to head to the gates, we'll make up an excuse to split off. Maybe we'll say we're grabbing coffee or something." I nodded, the plan coming together in my mind. "And then we just won't show up at their gate, we'll go to our gate instead." "Exactly, and once we're on the plane, I'll text Mom. I'll tell her that since you're not considered family, we decided to do our own thing." It was simple, bold, and empowering. That night, as we packed our bags, the sting of Sandra's words still lingered, but the thrill of our upcoming adventure overpowered it. We were really doing this. The next morning at the airport, the usual pre-flight chaos buzzed around us. Sandra was busy handing out boarding passes, her voice loud as she went over plans for the trip, completely unaware of our secret. The family chatted excitedly about the beaches and activities in Hawaii, while Tom and I exchanged knowing glances. As we walked towards the security line, Tom leaned over and whispered, "Ready for this?" "More than ever," I whispered back, surprised by how strong my voice sounded. We were stepping into a new chapter, one where we weren't just following someone else's rules or expectations. This time, we were writing our own story. The airport was alive with activity, families, travelers, and crowds rushed about, each lost in their own plans. As we rolled our suitcases through the sliding doors of the departure hall, the air was filled with announcements and the excited buzz of people heading off on their adventures. Despite the chaos around us, I felt calm. We were finally doing something for ourselves. My heart raced with a mix of nerves and excitement as we walked through the airport, each step reminding me of the bold choice Tom and I had made. We stayed close to his family, blending in with the usual routines and the lively chatter about their vacation plans. Sandra, fully in vacation mode, was handing out itineraries and barking last-minute instructions, oblivious to the rebellion brewing right under her nose. "Everyone, remember, we're meeting at gate 24, Sandra called out, her voice carrying a note of authority over the noise. We nodded and responded without thinking, playing along as we prepared for our secret plan. The plan was simple, but bold. As we neared the security checkpoint, Tom leaned in and whispered, "Ready for the coffee trick?" I nodded, feeling both tense and excited. "Let's do it." After clearing security, the family headed straight for gate 24, but Tom gently tugged my arm, leading me toward a nearby coffee shop. "We're just grabbing a quick coffee," he called out casually to the group. Sandra barely gave us a glance, too focused on gathering everyone at the gate. Once inside the coffee shop, we waited until the family was out of sight, then made a quick, quiet exit in the opposite direction, heading toward a different part of the terminal. My heart pounded as we looked around to make sure no one from the family could see us. It felt like something out of a spy movie, sneaking through the airport with our own secret plan. When we found our gate, the relief was immediate. The departure screen confirmed our flight to San Francisco, and we finally sat down, feeling a little more at ease. Tom pulled out his phone, hesitating for just a second before typing out the message that would cut us off from the family vacation. "Mom, since Emma isn't considered family yet, we decided it's best to do our own thing this time. We're heading to San Francisco instead and we'll spend the week there. We needed to do what's best for us right now. I hope you understand." He pressed send, and just like that, the message was gone, marking a new chapter. We turned off our phones, choosing to silence whatever responses might come in the moment. The relief was immediate, but there was also an underlying tension, knowing we would have to deal with the fallout later. As we boarded the plane, it felt like stepping into a new world, a space where we could finally breathe, free from the expectations and disappointments that had weighed us down. When the plane took off, it felt like we were leaving behind the weight of the last few days. One chapter of our lives was fading behind us, while a new adventure awaited in the distance. Back with the family, the reaction was explosive. When Tom finally turned his phone back on, it buzzed non-stop with a flood of messages, confusion, outrage, disbelief. Texts from Sandra and other family members filled the screen, each one reacting to our decision. A mix of shock and accusations flooded Tom's phone. Sandra's messages stood out, sharp and filled with blame. "How could you embarrass me like this? This is irresponsible and utterly selfish." Her words stung, but as San Francisco came into view, bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun reflecting off the ocean, the noise of the family's discontent felt distant. We were on our own adventure, one we had chosen together. Despite the turbulence we left behind, ahead of us lay a new path, full of our own choices and dreams. This escape wasn't just from an airport or a family vacation. It was a move toward finding our own moments of freedom. San Francisco welcomed us with its iconic fog and lively streets. We wandered through Fisherman's Wharf, laughing over clam chowder and sourdough bread, snapping photos beneath the majestic Golden Gate Bridge. For the first time in a long while, it felt like we had truly escaped. We were free to explore and enjoy each other's company, without the looming shadow of Sandra's disapproval. For those few days, our spirits soared as high as the city's famous hills. But even as we lost ourselves in the beauty of the city, Tom's phone continued to buzz with reminders of the storm we had left behind. He kept the details to himself, trying to protect me from the worst of the backlash, but I could see the tension in his eyes. Reality awaited us, heavy and unavoidable. When we returned home, it hit us right away. Sandra's car was parked outside, a dark cloud over what we had hoped would be a peaceful return. Tom squeezed my hand, silently bracing for what was to come. We hadn't even put down our luggage when Sandra stormed through the front door, her face twisted with rage and hurt. How could you two be so selfish to just run off like that? She snapped, her voice slicing through the calm we had gathered. Mom, we needed to do what was best for us. We felt excluded and unwelcome, Tom replied, his voice steady but clearly defensive. That's no excuse to humiliate me in front of the entire family. Sandra shot back, her hands trembling with anger. The argument escalated quickly. I tried to step in, hoping to calm things down. Sandra, we didn't mean to upset you, but... Don't you dare butt in, young lady, she interrupted, her eyes blazing with fury. You're the reason my son is turning against me. In a sudden flash of anger, Sandra lunged forward and slapped me. The sting of the slap wasn't just physical, it was the clearest sign of the toxicity we had been trying to escape. Tom immediately stepped between us, his face filled with outrage. That's enough, Mom. You can't just come here and attack Emma like that. The situation spiraled out of control. Sandra continued to hurl accusations, her voice rising with every insult. Tom had no choice but to call the police. By the time the officers arrived, the air was thick with tension and unspoken bitterness. After explaining the situation and showing the red mark on my cheek, we pressed charges. Sandra was taken away, still spewing anger and resentment. When the officers left, the house fell into a heavy silence. Tom and I sat down, the adrenaline slowly fading, leaving behind only exhaustion and a deep sadness. We had escaped for a moment, but reality had followed us home. We were no longer the same people who had nervously hatched a plan in an airport coffee shop. We had grown stronger, united by everything we'd been through and our shared vision for the future. Looking back, I realized that our journey wasn't just about escaping Sandra's toxic influence, it was about embracing our right to create our own family story, one built on love and mutual respect, things that were non-negotiable for us. This wasn't just about leaving the past behind. It was about moving forward into a life we had chosen together, a life where every new day was a testament to our resilience and our commitment to never settle for less than we deserved. As moving day approached, I glanced at the packed boxes around us, a symbol of our readiness for a fresh start. This wasn't the end of our story, it was the beginning of a bold new chapter. A chapter filled with hope, peace, and the promise of building something beautiful, on our own terms. As we closed the door on our old life, we stepped confidently into our future, ready to write our own narrative. And that's the end of our story, everyone. Now, I want to ask you, do you think it's justifiable to cut ties with family members if they continually disrespect your boundaries? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you and you want to see more content like this, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these stories. Let's keep the conversation going in the comment section.
Hi, I'm Jenna and I'm 40 years old. I've been through a lot with my in-laws mistreating me like many other women have. But my experience is unique because I found a way to stand up for myself. I want to share my story to help others facing similar struggles. It all began when my husband told me, "I have something important to tell you." "What's wrong, honey? Is everything all right?" "No, I'm scared. I saw my mom and sister do something really bad." "What? What did they do?" "I finally understand. I don't think these women have your best interests at heart, and I'm truly sorry for not believing you before." Micah was talking about all the times when Gladys and Hannah, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, treated me unfairly. They would ruin my outfits for special events, mess with my food and drinks to embarrass me, and even spread lies about my successful business, all because they resented me for marrying their son and brother. I had complained to Mako about their behavior countless times, but he never took me seriously. However, in this moment, he finally did. "Well, what changed your mind?" "I saw this." Mako showed me security camera footage from our business. My husband and I sell crocheted items, like baby clothes and purses. It's a business I started and have been passionate about, but Gladys and Hannah always tried to discourage me from pursuing it. "Are you sure you should be involved in this business? It's not going to succeed, especially with your lack of expertise." "Excuse me?" What she means is that you're not capable enough to handle this business. You should just give up and focus on being a housewife or finding a regular job. Starting a business is too difficult for someone like you. Do you understand what I'm saying? These women always tried to stop me from doing things that made me happy. I think they were jealous because why else would they behave so horribly? My suspicions about them being mean finally became clear when they tried to embarrass me. Even when I showed my ruined dress to my husband, begged him to taste my tampered food, and proved their lies about my business, he didn't believe me. He had to see it for himself. And finally he did. The video Micah showed me was shocking. I couldn't believe people would do something so terrible. In the video, we could see two masked women, one taller and one shorter, vandalizing our building with spray paint. Take a closer look. Notice the lady with the necklace. I looked closer, and it seemed like Gladys' unique necklace that Micah brought her from Fiji. I understand now. Who else could it be? They look so similar. I believe you now. Tears welled up in my eyes. I felt both angry and hurt because it took him so long to believe me, but I also felt relieved that someone finally understood my struggles. I didn't want to tell him about this because they were his family. I couldn't just speak badly about them or take them to court for the damage they caused. But I did want to get back at them, and I had been thinking about how to do it for a long time. Suddenly, Micah's phone rang, and it was Hannah. Speak of the devil, right? He answered and talked to her for a bit. When he hung up, he said, "So Hannah just told me that Uncle Peter is back from his trip, and Mom wants to have a big family gathering since a lot of people are home for the summer." "Okay, when? This weekend? Are you going to talk to them about what we saw in the video?" "I want to, but it's hard for me. They're my mother and my sister, you know. But if you want to confront them, I'll support you in any way I can." The weekend arrived and Micah and I got to Gladys' house early to help prepare for the big family gathering. Uncle Peter was everyone's favorite, so his return after a long absence would be a special occasion. When we arrived, I noticed that both Hannah and Gladys' attitudes changed from happy and smiling to jealousy and disgust. "Oh, you two are here early." "Yeah, Mom, we wanted to lend a hand. We know there will be a lot of guests today. Aren't you sweet? We're happy to help." As I spoke, Hannah and Gladys both turned their gaze toward me, giving me looks as if I had done something wrong. But they couldn't prove it yet. "Oh, Jenna, it's awful that your lovely business was vandalized like that. I saw it on my way here. Such a tragedy. Absolutely dreadful, indeed." Even a child could sense that these women were up to something sneaky. Despite their outward concern, they seemed unusually cheerful, almost gleeful. I even caught them trying to suppress a laugh. But I had to stay quiet. I didn't want to cause a scene just yet. I was determined to get my revenge at the right time, so for now, I bided my time. I know it's just terrible. We're both wondering who could have done such a thing. Yeah, it was really upsetting to see something we put so much effort into being damaged like that. Right, but don't worry, the police will investigate. The police? Why involve them for such a small crime? It's probably just some kids messing around. No need to make a big deal out of it. Oh, Hannah, it's kind of you to care about these supposed troublemakers, but they should still face consequences for their actions. They knew what they were doing. I agree with Hannah. We all did silly things as teenagers. Let's not dwell on it. Come on, let's focus on getting everything ready for the party. I could sense that they were nervous, trying to brush off the whole incident after asking so many questions about it. Micah and I exchanged a knowing glance and joined in to help with the party preparations. We spent the whole morning and early afternoon setting up, cooking, and cleaning. By 3 p.m., family members started arriving for the reunion. After finishing our tasks and relaxing a bit, Micah pulled me aside. "I have something for you. It's a hidden microphone. I want you to wear it." "What? Why? What's going on?" "I'm not strong enough to confront my mother or sister. I'm sorry I'm not as assertive as you want me to be, but maybe this is better. If you expose them, you'll get all the credit. You've always been stronger than me. Wear the mic and approach them. You might uncover something and get justice. I won't stop you." I appreciated Micah's support, even though I wished he would be more confrontational. With that, I put on the mic, hit record, and went to find those two troublemakers. I finally found them talking in the kitchen, deep in a heated discussion. Before I entered, I listened at the door to hear what they were saying. "She's on to us, Mom. Did you see the way she looked at us?" "Stop it, Hannah. You're overreacting. She doesn't know it was us." "I swear, Mom, she knows everything." "Okay, calm down. Even if she suspects something, What can she do? Micah loves us, and she loves Micah. If she did find out, she'd probably tell him. And then Micah would just brush it off, saying she's imagining things. That's what's been working for us so far, hasn't it? What do you mean? Remember when we ruined her dress before her crush at business pitch? Or when we messed with her food and drink? She told Micah about it. There's no way she didn't share her suspicions with him. But because he loves us, he overlooked it. He'll do the same now. I couldn't stand their villainous conversation any longer, so I burst into the room. Even though I'd been recording everything, I was worried the microphone hadn't picked up enough evidence. I needed to get closer to gather more proof against them for my revenge. Hey, you two, Uncle Peter will be here soon. Do you need help with anything else? Jenna, you scared us. Yes, Jenna, I have a weak heart. Don't startle me like that again. Apparently not weak enough. What did you just say? Oh, it's nothing, just that you seem pretty energetic for someone your age. Energetic? How so? Well, I could have sworn I saw you doing something active recently. Maybe it was a dream, but I remember seeing you in black clothes, wearing a mask. They paused for a moment, catching on to what I was implying. Bingo. Yeah, I think you were up to something quite serious. What exactly are you implying? I think you know exactly what I mean, Gladys said, closing the door for a more private conversation. What are you trying to suggest? Hannah asked. I'm not trying to suggest anything. Well, we have no idea what you're talking about, so stop now. I'm not sure. Honestly, I think I might have also seen someone else with their face covered, along with the other person doing something illegal. What a shame. I hope they catch those criminals soon. Anyway, Mom, I think we should leave now. Not so fast, Hannah. I want you both to see something. What's that? I then showed them the video footage that Micah had shown me. Oh, you caught the vandals. Well, now that we know who they are, there's no need to look into it any further. Let's just drop the issue. Jenna, you're being unbearable with this. Vandalism happens to other buildings too, you know. Yeah, Jenna, just move on. It's not worth all this fuss. Actually, ladies, I think it is a big deal. I found something interesting in this video. Take a closer look. Both of them leaned in and zoomed in on the phone screen to see what I was talking about. The horror and shock on their faces confirmed all my suspicions. They were the ones who had vandalized my building. I knew it, Mom. Quiet, this doesn't prove anything. Who else has this necklace, ladies? I can't handle it anymore. Okay, it was us. Hannah, don't you dare say another word. Well, Mom, she's figured it out. I don't know what you want me to say. Yes, Jenna, we did it. We damaged your business. But what are you going to do about it? Yeah, Jenna, there's nothing you can do in this situation. We know that Micah cares more about us than he does about you. So even if you try to take action, he won't punish us because he loves us. He really does love you guys, and he probably won't do anything. But sweetie, why do you think I won't? Do you think I'm afraid of you too? You mess with my business, which is like my child. I won't let you off the hook. Gladys and Hannah both tried to grab the phone from me, but thankfully I was faster and managed to escape. Come back here, you foolish girl. Even if you grab the phone, the data's already backed up, so there's no point in fighting me unless you want to worsen your already weak heart. Don't you dare provoke my mom. Do you think you're funny? Do you think you're clever? Give us the data now, or else I'll... What? Huh. What will you do? I'll hurt you in ways you never imagined. Oh, I'm shaking in my boots. Please don't hurt me. You cheeky little thing. We were running around the kitchen until I finally opened the door. It's a good thing I did because right outside was Micah. Help, your mom and sister are acting crazy. I came to tell you that Uncle Peter is here. What's happening? I'll tell you what's happening. Your wife is falsely accusing us of damaging her business, and she's threatening us. That's not true. Tell them, Micah. There was silence. Micah looked upset, struggling to speak clearly. I know you're not used to arguing with your mom and sister, or arguing at all for that matter, but I need you to stand up for me, your wife, right now. Please. Still, there was silence, and Micah looked dejected. I felt a pang of disappointment. You see, honey, Micah will always side with us, not you. He loves us more. Now that's not fair. I love you all equally. You're all important to me, which makes it tough to decide. Decide what? Why not choose honesty? We both know it. You're the one who showed me the footage. What, Micah? Why would you do that? Because it's my business too, and what you did was wrong. Not just this incident, but all the other times you've hurt my wife. You need to stop, please. We'll forgive you. Speak for yourself. I'm still going to press charges. Not while I'm here. Just then, Uncle Peter, our respected guest of honor, walked in. He seemed happy but also worried because we were all here while everyone else was waiting for the celebrations to start. Oh, Peter, my dear, it's wonderful to see you. You look great. Yes, we'll start the celebrations soon. Let me take you to your special seat. Tell me all about your trip. We're not done with you, Jenna. If you try anything, I promise we'll make sure Micah divorces you. Why do you talk to Micah like he's a child? He's a grown man who can make his own choices. He wouldn't divorce me just because you tell him to, right, honey? You see, he hesitated, dropping his head for the second time in 5 minutes. I really did date a wasp. I stormed off angrily and went to the big dining table where about 30 people were sitting. I sat down, seething but trying to stay calm. Soon after, Micah and Hannah joined me. But I stayed quiet, even though Micah seemed like he wanted to say something. I was too angry at him. Eventually, Gladys and Uncle Peter arrived and we all celebrated. Despite the uncomfortable fight earlier, the festivities began. While we were eating, my anger boiled inside me, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. Attention, everyone. I have something important to say. There are 2 people here who have always hated me, who tried to make my life miserable. Some of you might already know, but I'll make sure you all understand. I played the recording from our earlier argument for everyone to hear. People gasped and looked shocked at what they were hearing. Hannah and Gladys were frozen in their seats, denying everything and accusing me of lying. The dinner turned chaotic. I yelled at Gladys and Hannah, and they yelled back. The other adults at the table tried to figure out what was happening. Micah, as usual, stayed silent. That is, until he heard sirens, and then everyone went quiet. The police were on their way to the house. What have you done, you wretch? I'll get you. I didn't do anything. I did. I'm the one who called thee. Mom, Hannah, you need to face the consequences for what you've done. I called the police on you, and they have a warrant for your arrest because I secretly recorded the conversation that Jenna played for everyone. We've all seen how Mom and Hannah treat Jenna, but none of us said anything, especially me. Jenna is my wife, and from now on, I'm standing by her side because she's been proven right. Mom, Hannah, please cooperate. At that moment, the police entered the house and arrested Gladys, who cursed and yelled as she was taken away. Hannah tried to run but was caught by the police. Both women were embarrassed as they were dragged out of the house. They glared at me, calling me names, and at Micah, accusing him of betrayal. After Hannah and Gladys left, the night continued, albeit a bit awkwardly. We all opened up about how toxic they were. Even Uncle Peter joked that he'd rather be in prison than be around them. We laughed and enjoyed the rest of the family reunion without them. Throughout the night, some family members received calls from a local jail. Knowing it was Hannah and Gladys, some answered and told them they needed to learn a lesson. Others pretended the network was down, and many simply refused to take the calls. Micah and I grew closer after he supported me by calling the police. Hannah and Gladys paid a fine for the damages and are out of jail, but their egos took a hit. When we see them now, they look ashamed and afraid instead of jealous and disgusted, which suits me fine. Revenge has never felt so satisfying. I'm going to my parents' house for a month. What will you do about your chores at home if you're leaving? My son, I'm getting divorced. My mother-in-law gave me divorce papers. This works out well, she said when I left. I filed for divorce, went to my parents' house, and told my dad. After a month, my mother-in-law called me nonstop. Please, I messed up, I'm sorry, help me. My name is Emily. I'm 38 years old and I work in an office. Right now, I live with my husband, Tucker, and my mother-in-law in their house. Even though I should feel happy about being married to Tucker, I really regret it. The reason is that my mother-in-law bullies me all the time and never changes her behavior. Tucker and I met at work. Our companies were partners, so we often worked together. Over time, we became closer and started going out for meals and dates. After about a year of dating, Tucker proposed, and we decided to get married. That was 3 years ago when I was 35. At the start of our marriage, we were really happy. It was just the two of us, and I hadn't realized what my husband was really like yet. We both had good jobs and made good money. On weekends, we treated ourselves to nice trips and delicious meals at fancy restaurants. I thought we'd keep making great memories together. But things changed 2 years into our marriage. It all started when my husband's dad got sick suddenly and passed away. My mom is really sad about losing Dad, my husband said, turning to me for advice. Do you think we should move in with her? Huh. I was a bit confused. Sure, I cared about my mother-in-law, but we had only been married for 2 years. I wanted to live as a couple a bit longer, at least, but it seemed like my husband didn't want to leave his mom alone. I'm her only son, so I feel like I need to take care of her as much as I can, you know? Truth is, I hadn't been very attentive to my own dad before he passed away. Tucker, seeing my husband so sad, I felt the urge to help and support him. But I still regret the decision we made back then. If only I had realized what my husband was really like sooner, maybe things wouldn't have been so tough. Shortly after, my husband and I moved into my in-laws' house. Tucker, it's good of you to be here, my mother-in-law said. Mom, you don't have to worry anymore now that we're here, Tucker replied. Thank you, dear. I'll take care of you both from now on, she said. Of course, we appreciate it, Tucker responded. I couldn't shake the feeling that my mother-in-law's response to me was a bit distant. Feeling uneasy, I walked into the in-laws' house. After quickly putting away our things, my husband and I headed to the living room. I got some treats today since you were coming, my mother-in-law said. These are from my favorite bakery. I love the almond paste they use, my husband exclaimed happily, and I couldn't help but smile at his childlike excitement. But then my mother-in-law gave me a cold look and said, Emily, are you all right? Why do you look so lost? Huh? I brought some pastries, so let's hurry and make some coffee. I'm sorry, where are the coffee pots and things? You're so useless, aren't you? Huh? Oh, here they are. The shelf for the wife's stuff is here, she said, placing things in a messy way as she spoke. This happened because you never helped out before. Even though my mother-in-law said that, I couldn't agree. Even before, my husband and I often visited her house. But whenever I offered to help, she'd say, no need, just sit down, and wouldn't let me into the kitchen. Maybe she had strong preferences and didn't want anyone else interfering with her space, I thought later. I decided to stop offering to help altogether. Yet she would still get mad at me out of nowhere, which I thought was unfair. In response, my mother-in-law gave me a harsh look. What's with that look? Do you have a problem? She snapped. No, I didn't want to argue directly with her. Instead, I hoped my husband would step in and stop her. I glanced at him sitting at the dining table, but he seemed unconcerned, busy playing with his phone. It made me mad that he didn't care about me, his wife, being unfairly scolded. I never expected to face such unpleasantness right from the start. I started feeling anxious about living with my mother-in-law. And so, living with my mother-in-law began, and right away, problems started arising. It happened early in the morning. Hey, Emily, why are you still sleeping? I quickly checked the time on my phone. Well, it's only 5 in the morning, Mother. So what? You should be up making breakfast and Tucker's lunch, and don't forget you're supposed to clean the bathroom every day. My mother-in-law's words shocked me. Firstly, I didn't usually make lunch for my husband, and we often skipped breakfast because we weren't hungry. Plus, I never cleaned the bathroom before going to work because it was tiring. Sure, doing all those things required waking up early, but were they really necessary? As I hesitated, my mother-in-law got mad at me for not moving. Why are you just standing there? Hurry up. What kind of upbringing did you have to become so useless? She scolded. Her words angered me, so I decided to do exactly as she said. Every day, I woke up at 5:00 a.m. and cooked lunch and breakfast for my husband and me. It wasn't just simple meals. I made fancy dishes, and I always cleaned the bathroom thoroughly. Surprisingly, I started feeling better about cleaning the bathroom. It felt good to have a clean bathroom every day. My husband appreciated my hard work and thanked me for the meals and cleaning. But my mother-in-law didn't seem happy. She kept demanding more from me. Today, I feel like having Japanese food. No, wait, Italian. Oh, but it has to be authentic. Make pizza from scratch, cook pasta, and get that red wine from the fancy shop. My mother-in-law would make these demanding requests as if it were a special occasion. And the frustrating part is that my husband always listens to her. Make sure you do it exactly how my mom wants, he'd say, leaving everything to me. He didn't help at all. And once I took charge, he wouldn't lift a finger. Most of our precious days off were spent preparing the dinners my mother-in-law desired. On top of that, she would complain to me about various things. You're a wife. Why are you still working? You should be at home supporting your husband. Plus, you're getting older, and the time to have children is running out. Do you realize you're almost worthless? She'd say. Every day, my mother-in-law bombarded me with hurtful words, causing me to question her character. What kind of upbringing would produce someone like her? And my husband never stood up for me. One day, already stressed from work and dealing with my mother-in-law, my husband said something to me. My mom says you're neglecting the housework. Is that true? You never listen to me and always act defiantly. I used to appreciate you making lunch every day, but now I hear it's all frozen food. Do you really believe what your mom says? Of course I believe her. Why wouldn't I? Are you suggesting my mom is lying? You're acting terribly as a wife. Can't you fulfill your role properly? My husband snapped. I was furious at his words. What are you talking about? Just look for yourself. I make homemade lunches, clean, do laundry, and cook dinner every day, I protested. I'm telling you to stop lying. What mom says is true, Tucker. You're acting crazy, you mama's boy. What are you even saying? You never believe me or help me with anything. What exactly do you want me to do? You're such a nuisance, I retorted. It's just as mom says. Tucker's face turned red as he angrily responded. After that big fight, their relationship worsened. Whenever my mother-in-law harassed me, Tucker would join in and insult me too. Hey, is dinner ready? I just got home. Hurry up, my husband demanded. You're so slow and useless, my mother-in-law chimed in. Well, you're both failures, so it's no surprise, I muttered under my breath. Never mind, let's just go out to eat together, my husband suggested. That sounds good. Let's go, my mother-in-law agreed. They left me behind and went out to eat together, completely excluding me from the family. Every day, I endured insults and belittlement from both of them. Did I really need to put up with this marriage? That's when an unexpected opportunity came my way, and I thought, with this, I don't need to stay with my husband and mother-in-law anymore. Amidst all the turmoil, my husband and mother-in-law kept harassing me as usual. You're absolutely worthless as a daughter-in-law. I can't fathom how my son ended up marrying you. She scolded me while my husband chuckled along. It's time for a change, I interrupted, standing firm in front of them. I'm going back to my parents' house for a month. They both stared at me with widened eyes, a mix of surprise and anger evident on their faces. What? What about the house? What if there's a fire? My husband panicked. Yeah, you're being incredibly irresponsible. If you're leaving, then divorce my son. My mother-in-law yelled, grabbing something from a drawer. It was the divorce papers. She threw them at me. Go ahead, sign it, she challenged. Oh, Mom, you're prepared for this, my husband remarked, surprised. That's right. You have no choice but to obey us. If you don't like it, then get a divorce. This is a convenient situation, my mother-in-law asserted. Fine, let's get divorced then, I responded firmly. They both widened their eyes in shock at my response, but I ignored their reactions and picked up the divorce papers, starting to fill them out. I'm done with my part, so please leave quickly, I told them. My husband blinked at me in disbelief. Was that earlier just a bluff? That was really lame, he muttered. But when I insisted, he probably glared at me. Don't mess around. I'm serious. Let's get divorced, I said firmly. Tucker forcefully snatched the divorce papers from me and filled in his own section. Is this good enough? He asked, slamming the divorce papers on the table. Even if you want to take it back, it's too late. Oh well, this means it's over for you two in my heart. She laughed loudly. I thought it's over for you guys. As soon as I left my in-laws' house, I promptly submitted the divorce papers. I returned to my parents' house and told my father about everything. He was shocked and promised to take necessary actions to address the situation. Then, 1 month later, my mother-in-law bombarded me with phone calls. Hello? You, what do you want? We're complete strangers now. Please don't say that. Tucker and I are in a difficult situation, I responded. Oh really? That must be tough for you, she replied sarcastically. I haven't said anything yet. I'd rather end this call. Can I hang up? Wait, I have a favor to ask. Can you talk to your father? My mother-in-law pleaded. Why should I, after everything you and Tucker put me through? I retorted. I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize that your father's company is an important business partner of the company Tucker works for, she explained. Actually, my father runs his own company and it's quite successful. He used to have business dealings with Tucker's company too. We probably discussed this before we got married. But at that time, my father-in-law was still alive, and maybe my mother-in-law didn't think she needed to be involved in the conversation. As for Tucker, it's strange that he doesn't remember. But maybe he forgot while siding with my mother-in-law and criticizing me. When my father decided to end the business dealings, Tucker's company offered to continue the contract by letting go of Tucker instead. So Tucker lost his job. And it turns out that Tucker had suggested remodeling our family home when we were planning to live together, and he took out a loan for it. Now that he's unemployed, it's almost impossible to manage loan payments while trying to make a living. Until now, we've been able to manage because I have been contributing my fair share of living expenses as a company employee. But now that I'm divorced, Tucker and my mother-in-law must be in a tough situation. Why did you feel the need to show off by remodeling the house, Tucker? You're so proud, just like your mother. Please help me, my mother-in-law pleaded. I apologize for my mistakes, she continued weakly, lacking the strength to respond to my provocation. I'm sorry, but I can't forgive you for what you've done. If you're expecting me to help you, it's pointless. Instead, focus on finding a job, even if it's temporary. As for me, this conversation is a waste of time, so I'm ending it now. After ending the call and blocking their numbers, I heard that my ex-husband and mother-in-law couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments, so they had to sell the house. It wasn't even that old, and my mother-in-law could have lived there during her retirement. It's a shame they wasted money and let it go. Currently, they're living in an apartment on an island somewhere. My ex-husband works part-time while they rely on my mother-in-law's pension to get by. Meanwhile, I was getting ready to move overseas. Instead of renting a new place, I decided to stay with my parents until I leave. I'll cherish the time with them until then. I'm excited and hopeful about life and work in the new country. Despite the difficulties with my ex-husband and mother-in-law, I'm optimistic about the future. I wonder why they treated me so poorly, but I'm glad to have cut ties with them. Maybe I'll find a wonderful partner overseas and have an international marriage. I genuinely wish them happiness in their future. Thanks for following my story. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel. I look forward to sharing more with you in the future.
For years, Julia had devoted herself to caring for her disabled husband, all while carrying their unborn child. But suspicions gnawed at her, leading her to place a discreet camera in their home. What she uncovered shattered her world. Meanwhile, in the office, oblivious to the passing time, Julia was engrossed in her work. Sketches littered her desk as she diligently crafted designs, her mind consumed by the project. It was only when her boss, Mark, appeared with concern etched on his face that she snapped back to reality. "Julia, dear, it's time to take a break," Mark gently admonished. "You've been here far too long. Simon needs to be picked up from school." With a jolt, Julia realized the lateness of the hour. "Nearly 7 already? I must hurry," she exclaimed, hastily gathering her belongings. "And we must discuss the new children's book cover design later. Traditional meets contemporary, remember?" As Julia rushed to the bus stop, Mark marveled at her dedication and multitasking prowess. He admired her not just as a colleague but as a person, captivated by her resilience amidst life's challenges. Yet, as he gazed into her somber eyes, Julia's focus remained steadfastly on her family, leaving Mark to ponder in solitude. Rushing into the Karate Academy, Julia found Simon anxiously waiting in the changing room. He sighed with relief upon seeing her, expressing his worry. "Mom, I thought you forgot about me. Everyone else's parents have already picked them up." Embracing him tightly, Julia apologized. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Work held me up. Let's head home now. How was school? Did you get a lot of homework?" As they made their way home, Simon shared proudly that he had finished his homework while waiting. Julia praised his responsibility. "You're truly remarkable, my dear. Always so dependable and excelling in school. I'm incredibly lucky to have you." Yet, both of them felt the absence of Julia's late husband, Simon's father, whose passing left a void in their lives. Upon their return, they found Octavio, Julia's current husband, reclined on the couch, visibly irritated, flipping through TV channels. He grumbled, "Took you long enough. I've been starving since lunch. Nobody cares about me, I'm just a burden." Worried, Julia inquired about Octavio's well-being. "Why are you speaking like this? Is your leg bothering you? I'll whip up dinner quickly and prepare a compress for you, I promise." Octavio's demeanor softened as he waited for his meal, while Simon, frustrated by Octavio's lack of consideration for his mother, headed to the kitchen to assist Julia, peeling potatoes and slicing tomatoes. Julia praised her son, grateful for his help. Since Octavio's illness, Julia's life had become an ongoing struggle. Balancing the care of her son, the demands of her job, and the needs of her sick husband left her with no time for herself, perpetually drained and exhausted. In the workplace, Julia commanded deep respect and admiration from her colleagues. Her dedication was unwavering, infused with compassion and boundless enthusiasm. But the roots of her story stretch back much further. Julia, the youngest in her family, faced profound loss early in life. Her parents, aged and frail, departed, leaving her feeling adrift in her spacious apartment bedroom. Yearning for moments shared with her mother, longing for words of encouragement and paternal affection, Julia found herself navigating a world now devoid of their presence. Amidst this tumultuous period, Julia encountered Tony, her first husband. A soldier by profession, Tony's deployments often kept him far from home, punctuated only by brief reprieves. Their love blossomed swiftly, culminating in marriage. Julia stood faithfully by his side, enduring the agonizing stretches of his absence. With the birth of their son Simon, Tony vowed to retire from his perilous occupation. Tragically, that pledge remained unfulfilled. Tony never returned, leaving Julia a widow at the tender age of 25. Though the mornings were fraught with sorrow, Julia found solace in the unwavering love of her son and the refuge of her work. Years later, Julia's path intersected with Octavio, a man of striking contrast to Tony. Secure and charismatic, he courted her with poetic gestures and bouquets of flowers. Unwittingly, Julia found herself falling deeply in love. Octavio proved adept with Simon, and their bond led to marriage, buoyed by Octavio's steadfast insistence. As a builder, Octavio's work often necessitated travel, providing financial stability to their home. However, murmurs of skepticism swirled among Julia's colleagues at the workshop. Rose, a trusted confidant, voiced concerns, questioning the nature of Octavio's frequent absences and the secrecy surrounding his past. Julia, bristling at the insinuations, defended her husband's honor, urging her colleagues to desist from unfounded speculation. "Please stop," she implored. "Octavio has his reasons for guarding his past. It's not for us to pry. He provides for us, and that's all that matters. And rest assured, our family is expanding with the arrival of our new baby. Simon is overjoyed at the prospect of a sibling." However, tragedy befell Octavio during his work at a construction site in a nearby city. A fall from the third-floor scaffolding left him with severe injuries to his leg and ankle. Despite returning home with a cast, his mobility remained compromised long after the accident. For a man accustomed to activity, this incident dealt a crushing blow, leaving him feeling incapacitated and detached from the world around him. Julia, empathetic and supportive, shouldered the burden of household duties, caring for Simon, and assuming sole financial responsibility as Octavio's ability to work waned. With Octavio confined to their home, unable to contribute economically, Julia found herself stretched thin, especially with the impending arrival of their new baby. Yet, resolute in her determination to remain strong for her children, she soldiered on. What troubled her most, however, was Octavio's demeanor. He appeared disengaged, showing little interest in Simon's academic progress or household matters. Julia couldn't help but feel frustrated that despite his injury, Octavio seemed unwilling to offer even a modicum of support. "Octavio, why do you remain so despondent?" Julia implored, attempting to buoy his spirits. "Perhaps a short walk on the balcony for some fresh air might lift your mood. I'll assist you. It could aid in your recovery. Don't succumb to despair like this. Can't you see how much I'm struggling? I'm in constant pain, and the painkillers hardly alleviate it. I feel utterly helpless." Octavio's response came laced with accusation. "You're selfish, Julia. You only consider your own needs. Pregnancy isn't an ailment. Why do you complain? I spend my days alone, waiting for your return, only to be met with blame when you're here." Julia's heart sank at the bitterness in his words, grappling with the weight of her responsibilities and the strain on their relationship. A few days later, Octavio stumbled upon an online healer named Camila, boasting quick and effective cures for muscular and bone ailments. Despite Julia's attempts to dissuade him, Octavio remained convinced of the treatment's efficacy. Regular visits from Camila ensued, with Octavio claiming a reduction in his pain. On an ordinary day, Julia returned home earlier than usual due to Simon's illness, finding unfamiliar female footwear in the hallway. Realization dawned swiftly: Camila was in their house. The closed kitchen door piqued Julia's curiosity, prompting her to eavesdrop on Octavio and the supposed healer's conversation. What she heard left her reeling. Octavio's discontent spilled forth as he lamented, "Camila, I can't go on like this. Pretending to be infirm is exhausting. My back aches from lying around all day, and I've even put on weight. When will we rid ourselves of Julia and her son? She's already growing tired of me, but I can't wait to claim this magnificent house as my own." Attempting to assuage Octavio's impatience, Camila cautioned, "Rushing this will only invite suspicion, especially now that Julia's pregnant. We must proceed carefully. You'll need to care for the unborn child to avoid arousing suspicion as a widower. Patience is key. We've narrowly escaped detection before. Obtaining reliable poison is imperative. Administer it gradually in their tea, ensuring their demise appears as severe poisoning. No traces must remain. In a month, they'll be gone, and you'll be free." A shiver raced down Julia's spine as she absorbed the sinister plot unfolding before her. Her colleague's suspicions about Octavio had proven tragically accurate. Her immediate impulse to confront them battled with the need for concrete evidence. She couldn't risk their escape. "He never loved me. Our marriage was a facade," Julia realized bitterly. "His reaction to my pregnancy wasn't joy, it was dread. I've endangered Simon by leaving him in Octavio's care." Desperation and determination warred within her as she silently retreated, bracing herself for the confrontation ahead. Gathering her resolve, Julia burst into the room with calculated force, masking her turmoil with practiced composure. "Hello, I'm back," she announced, steeling herself for the tumultuous ordeal ahead. As Julia stepped into the house, the kitchen door creaked open, revealing the healer. "Good afternoon, Julia. Our session just concluded. Your husband is showing signs of improvement. I'm doing everything in my power to aid his recovery," the healer announced. Julia, though shaken, maintained her facade of composure. "Thank you. I'll settle the payment in 2 days when I receive my salary. We'll settle the fees for both sessions," she replied calmly. With a nod, the healer departed, leaving Julia to confront her husband. Engaging in strained conversation with Octavio, Julia tended to his needs before checking on Simon, citing exhaustion and a throbbing headache. She was appalled by Octavio's deceit and the depths of his betrayal. The following day at work, Julia found herself consumed by distress, retreating to the privacy of the bathroom to weep. Lost in her turmoil, she was approached by Mark, whose concern was palpable. "Julia, forgive me if I'm prying, but something's clearly troubling you." "It pains me to see you like this," he remarked gently. Surprised by Mark's empathy, Julia divulged her harrowing ordeal. With a history of trust between them, she poured out her fears and uncertainties. "I feel trapped, Mark. It's like living with a traitor and a potential murderer. What should I do? How can I seek justice and safeguard Simon and myself?" she implored. Mark's response was resolute. "Julia, we must involve the authorities. I'll reach out to a reliable investigator I know. Share everything with him. He'll provide the assistance you need. Additionally, I have a plan. Discreetly tamper with Octavio's wheelchair, removing the screws, and leave a concealed recording device. If he's feigning his condition, he'll reveal it when the chair collapses. That'll be the evidence we require. I'll coordinate with the police for swift action. Remember, you're not alone in this." Empowered by Mark's support, Julia felt a surge of relief. With guidance from the investigator, her fear abated somewhat. She resolved to meticulously gather evidence against Octavio and the fraudulent healer, heeding the investigator's advice to exercise caution, preparing her own food and drink. Yet, with each encounter with Octavio, her resentment and fury simmered beneath the surface, fueling her determination to expose the truth. That night, Julia meticulously tampered with Octavio's wheelchair, carefully removing the screws and setting up her cell phone to record. As Octavio leaned on the chair, the wheels gave way, causing him to tumble. Swiftly rising to his feet, he attempted to maintain his ruse. Simon, drawn by the commotion, dashed into the room, jubilantly exclaiming, "Uncle Octavio, you're not sick anymore. You're cured. How amazing." Julia's applause was laced with sarcasm as she addressed Octavio. "Indeed, Simon, it appears the healer's sessions are yielding miraculous results. Just look at Octavio's sudden agility. How could you deceive us like this? Why pretend to be ill?" Octavio, caught off guard, feigned discomfort, attempting to salvage his facade. But Julia's patience had worn thin. "Enough of this farce, Octavio. Your deceit is laid bare. There was never any injury, it was all a fabrication." Before Octavio could concoct a response, the doorbell rang. Simon rushed to answer it, ushering in Mark accompanied by a police officer. Informed of the plan, Mark wasted no time in springing into action. Together, they swiftly immobilized Octavio, thwarting any chance of escape. The police officer wasted no time in issuing the stern declaration: "Octavio Martinez, you and your accomplice Lucia, also known as Camila, are under arrest for attempted murder against Julia and Simon. Further investigation has revealed similar schemes in multiple cities, exploiting vulnerable individuals for personal gain. Your malicious intent will not go unpunished." Octavio's protests fell on deaf ears as the investigator intervened, silencing him. "Your theatrics won't save you, Octavio. Julia has provided damning evidence of your fraudulent recovery, and your accomplice has already confessed. Your time for deception is over." Julia, still reeling from the shock, watched as Octavio was escorted away, her heart heavy with the weight of betrayal. As the chaos subsided, Simon approached Mark, displaying a maturity beyond his years, a silent testament to the resilience of youth. "Thank you for helping Mom. Uncle Octavio is bad. I don't like him. He doesn't love Mom or me." "He's not coming back," Simon stated solemnly. Mark replied with equal gravity, "No, Simon, he's not coming back. And I'll be around if you'll have me because your mother needs support now." Simon's innocent smile brightened the room. "Sure, come visit us more often. You're like a movie hero unmasking Uncle Octavio," he quipped. Recognizing the need for privacy, Mark suggested, "How about you watch a cartoon? I need to talk to your mother. It's adult stuff, probably boring for you." Understanding, Simon headed to his room as Mark turned his attention to Julia. He enveloped her in a comforting embrace, his voice gentle. "Don't torment yourself anymore, Julia, it's all over. Octavio and his accomplice will be in prison for a long time." Julia, almost in a daze, murmured, "Why do I have such bad luck? My first husband died. The second was a criminal, and now I'm pregnant with his child. Why can't I find a decent man? Is it me?" Mark's response was steady and reassuring. "Don't you see who's been by your side all these years? You're searching for happiness in distant places without realizing what you already have. I've always loved you unconditionally, Julia. I would never betray you. Look around. I don't want to pressure you, but know that I'm here." Touched by his sincerity, Julia finally allowed herself to trust. She embraced him gratefully. "Thank you for being here, Mark, for everything. I don't know if I can reciprocate your feelings, but I'm willing to get to know you better, and who knows what the future holds." Mark's response was filled with understanding. "Don't worry, I have great admiration for you, and above all, I want to be your friend, someone you can trust. If it doesn't work out romantically, that's okay. But at least let me be there for you. I don't want you to leave my side, Mark. I just need time to process all this. But I definitely want us to get to know each other better," Julia confessed. From that moment on, Julia's life began to take a turn for the better. Despite the challenges of pregnancy and lingering doubts, Mark remained a constant source of support. Their bond deepened, and eventually Julia realized that Mark was the loving and reliable partner she had been searching for. She divorced Octavio and married Mark, finding happiness in the warmth of his love. She had always harbored dreams of a loving family, even though she initially dismissed Mark as merely a man of charming words. However, time proved him to be a steadfast and affectionate partner, both to her and to Simon. Their workshop thrived, and Mark's business ventures occasionally took him away on trips to negotiate clothing sales in other cities. Julia still had a month left until her expected due date, but fate took an unexpected turn one night when her water broke prematurely, triggering early contractions. In a panic, she called for an ambulance, slipping into unconsciousness, barely managing to request her neighbor's assistance in caring for Simon. Rushed to the hospital, Julia's labor unfolded into a nightmarish ordeal, a relentless struggle between consciousness and oblivion. Among the masked medical personnel attending to her, Julia failed to recognize one nurse, Lucia, Octavio's accomplice, who had seized an opportunity for revenge against Julia for thwarting her plans with Octavio. Upon regaining consciousness, Julia's heart sank as she realized the absence of her newborn. Frantically, she demanded answers, her voice a desperate cry echoing through the sterile hospital room. "Where is my son? I need to see my baby. What happened?" Approaching her with a heavy heart, a doctor gently broke the devastating news. "I'm deeply sorry, Julia, but your son didn't survive. The umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, and despite our best efforts, we couldn't save him. You're young, there will be other opportunities for you to have children." Overwhelmed by grief, Julia buried her face in her hands, her sobs echoing off the stark hospital walls. The doctors intervened, administering sedatives to ease her anguish, yet the pain of losing her child pierced her soul, leaving her shattered and bereft. Upon learning of the tragic loss, Mark hurried to the hospital to offer solace to Julia. She was consumed by inconsolable grief, murmuring through tears, "I would rather have perished than my son. I can't bear to live. Why did this happen to me?" Mark enveloped her in a tender embrace, his touch a feeble attempt to soothe her anguish. "Don't speak like that, Julia. You must stay strong, especially for Simon. He still needs you. Time will ease the pain. I'll be here every step of the way," he assured her gently. As they laid their baby to rest, Julia wept bitterly at the small graveside, grappling with the unbearable reality of their loss. Only Simon's unexpected fortitude and maturity offered her a glimmer of solace, allowing her to navigate the depths of her sorrow. Together, mother and son embarked on the arduous journey of healing. While the memory of their lost child continued to weigh heavily on Julia's heart, 7 years later, their atelier had blossomed into one of the city's most prestigious and sought-after establishments, drawing clientele from far and wide. Working in seamless harmony, Julia and Mark shared an unspoken understanding, their partnership flourishing amidst the creative whirl of their shared passion. Mark and Simon, now poised 13-year-old, had forged a bond akin to that of father and son. Simon excelled both on the soccer field and in his studies, a testament to his dedication and zest for life. One day, Julia found herself needing to take the subway for an urgent business meeting as their car was undergoing repairs. Along the way, her path intersected with that of a 7-year-old boy, his small frame supported by crutches, his appearance downtrodden and unkempt. Her heart constricted at the sight of him. Moved by compassion, she purchased pastries and hot tea, approaching the boy with a gentle offer. He devoured the food ravenously, nearly choking in his haste. Julia then delicately inquired, "Hello there, little one. What's your name? Why are you here on the streets? What happened to you?" The boy, once he finished eating, responded with a blend of timidity and resilience, "I'm John. I tried to ride a bicycle too big for me, and I ended up falling and injuring my leg. Since then, I had to rely on these crutches to get around." Concern etched across her features, Julia probed further, "That sounds serious, John. Haven't your parents taken you to see a doctor? You're so young. Surely there's treatment available." John let out a heavy sigh, his voice tinged with resignation. "My mother is always drunk, and I don't even know who my father is. She neglects me, never bothering to seek medical help. She insists it's better for me to beg for money." A wave of sadness and empathy washed over Julia as she wrapped the boy in a comforting embrace, pledging, "Fear not, John. My husband, Mark, and I will find a way to assist you. We'll explore avenues for your treatment." The boy regarded her with a mix of hope and skepticism. "I doubt it will make a difference. My mother prefers me to beg. She doesn't want me to get better," he lamented. Driven by an overwhelming urge to intervene, Julia vowed to John that she would spare no effort in improving his circumstances. Galvanized by her determination and the boy's longing for a brighter future, she offered reassurance. "Let's explore our options, John. Hold on to hope. We'll advocate for you. No child should endure suffering due to their parents' neglect." She swiftly dialed Mark, her voice choked with emotion, and relayed the distressing situation. Mark wasted no time, arriving promptly to lend his ear to John's tale and extend his assistance. Together they resolved to visit the boy's home to confront his mother and gain deeper insight into their predicament. With a touch of apprehension, John guided them to his apartment. As they prepared to depart, Julia took note of John's tattered and soiled attire, declaring, "We'll pick up some fresh clothes for you on our way. Excitedly, John inquired if he should bring anything along. Julia assured him, no need. We'll take care of everything. Upon reaching the apartment, they were met with a pungent odor of alcohol and tobacco lingering in the air. The apartment lay in disarray, and John's mother lay slumped in a chair, snoring loudly. With a heavy heart, John explained his mother's situation. She hasn't stirred since last night. She was drinking with some men in the kitchen. It'll be a while before she wakes. When she does, she'll demand money from me, then use it to buy more alcohol and cigarettes. If I don't bring enough, she'll hurl insults at me. Why is she like this? Why does she drink? Why doesn't she love me like other mothers? Julia and Mark exchanged grim glances, deeply troubled by John's account. However, their resolve remained unyielding as they declared, "We're taking you home, John. Tomorrow, we'll accompany you to see a doctor about your leg, all right?" Leaving a note for John's mother detailing their decision, they ushered him away from the desolate scene. John embraced Julia with heartfelt gratitude, likening her to a fairy from his storybooks. Though touched, Julia's smile was tinged with sorrow as she ran her fingers through the boy's unruly curls. En route, they purchased new attire and backpacks stocked with essentials for John, who expressed profound appreciation and eagerness for a fresh start with them. Arriving home, Julia's thoughts were consumed by caring for the child. After bathing John and examining his leg, they realized the severity of the situation. His limb was visibly misshapen, indicating a grave underlying condition. After a nourishing meal and clad in fresh attire, John drifted into a peaceful slumber, a serene smile gracing his lips. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Julia, Mark, and Simon convened to address their newfound responsibility. Julia was resolute in her determination to care for John, yet Mark voiced apprehensions regarding the potential complexities of formal adoption, cautioning of the legal hurdles they might face. Excited at the prospect of welcoming John into their fold, Simon pledged to be a supportive older brother. Mark interjected, "While I'm in favor of John staying with us, we must acknowledge the legal implications. Adoption is a lengthy and intricate process. Are you prepared for this?" Undeterred, Julia responded with unwavering resolve. "Ever since I laid eyes on John in the subway, something stirred within me. He's no longer a stranger, he's become family. I'm committed to giving him a happy and normal childhood. He deserves nothing less. Without our help, what fate awaits him? A life marred by delinquency and despair, perhaps even incarceration. Together, we can nurture him into a good person, help him find purpose, and who knows, maybe even walk again. I'm prepared to fight for him, no matter the obstacles. Thank you for standing by me." The following day, Julia escorted John to a pediatric orthopedist. After a thorough examination, including X-rays and CT scans, the doctor delivered their assessment. The condition of his leg is grave. We'll need to proceed with intricate surgery on the knee and ankle, followed by an extensive rehabilitation period. He'll require specialized footwear. With luck, within approximately 6 months, his leg should regain functionality. Are you in agreement with the proposed procedure? With unwavering resolve, John eagerly exclaimed, "I'm ready to undergo it. All of it means I can walk, run, and ride a bike again, Aunt Julia. I wholeheartedly accept the surgery. I promise to muster strength and refrain from complaining, no matter the hardships. When I fell off the bike it hurt, but I endured. I want my legs to be healthy again," John expressed, his voice filled with determination. Julia embraced the child, offering reassurance. "We'll take care of everything, John. My husband and I will cover the surgery costs. But now, we need to convince your mother to authorize it." Confronting John's mother, Jennifer, proved challenging. They found her inebriated and had to rouse her with cold water. Explaining their intentions amidst her intoxicated state was no easy feat. They discussed the medical consultation and diagnosis, but Jennifer, irate and intoxicated, protested vehemently. "Who are you to decide for my son? I'm his mother, and I won't allow you to lay a finger on him. He's my bread and butter. Give him back to me this instant." Attempting to reason with her, Julia pleaded softly, "Can't you see? You're consigning John to a life of hardship. Doesn't your son, who struggles to walk, deserve compassion? Have you considered his future? Please let the surgeon intervene. He deserves a chance at a healthy life. Can't you feel anything as a mother? We'll handle all the expenses. We just need your consent." Unmoved, Jennifer retorted, "Don't meddle in my affairs. You didn't give birth to him. I said no. If you don't return my son, I'll call the police and accuse you of kidnapping. Fed up, Mark slammed his hand on the table, his frustration evident. Go ahead, call the police. We'll show them the conditions you're subjecting your son to. John will be placed in a shelter and you'll forfeit your parental rights. Sign the consent now. Consider this a wake-up call. Your priority seems to be alcohol. With a pointed gesture, he presented bottles of alcohol alongside some food, silently challenging the negligent mother to reconsider her stance. Jennifer quickly assessed the situation, signing the papers without hesitation, but not without lamenting. Why are you doing this to me? I love my son. We're just going through hard times. I can't find a job. So I drink sometimes to numb the problems. Mark, silently reflecting, thought to himself, children shouldn't have to endure the consequences of their parents' vices. It's unfair. Outside, Julia and Mark breathed a sigh of relief, grateful to have extricated themselves from that tense situation. Almost simultaneously, they voiced their concern. We can't allow John to return to such a toxic environment. It's no place for a child. How he managed to survive there for so long is beyond me. With determination, Julia organized everything for John's surgery, ensuring all necessary tests were conducted. When the doctor requested blood donations from the family, an unexpected discovery surfaced. Julia and John shared the same rare blood type. Perplexed, the doctor inquired, "Are you two related?" Julia, denying any familial connection, explained John's situation. The doctor proposed a DNA test to confirm any potential relationship while proceeding with surgery preparations, expressing confidence in their likely connection. Sharing the doctor's observations with Mark, Julia contemplated, the doctor might be onto something. Have you noticed their striking resemblance? Perhaps we should compare childhood photos. Intrigued, Mark agreed, it's worth exploring. Let's proceed with the DNA test. Meanwhile, John braced himself for the impending surgery. As John underwent the procedure, Julia, having known him for just 2 weeks, experienced overwhelming concern. She anxiously awaited news, her heart heavy with worry. Finally, the doctor emerged with reassuring updates. The surgery was successful, though the road to recovery would be arduous. In that brief period, Julia and John had forged a bond so deep that they felt like a genuine family. John had become attached to Julia, facing each stage of his treatment with courage and even attempting to lift her spirits with his playful rhymes and wordplay. His recovery journey was not just physical but also emotional, filled with hurdles and moments of revelation. Julia accompanied him through it all, her heart a mixture of anxiety and hope. Witnessing John's resilience during physiotherapy sessions filled her with admiration. He approaches each exercise and procedure with such determination, even when the pain and exhaustion seem overwhelming, Julia often remarked, offering him a reassuring smile as she held his hand during their sessions. During this time, Julia couldn't shake off the thought of their shared rare blood type. As they lay in bed at night, she contemplated the possibility of some distant familial connection. Perhaps he's a distant cousin, she mused, attempting to unravel a family mystery she hadn't known existed. Sensing his wife's introspection, Mark inquired, "What's on your mind, Julia?" She sighed softly, responding, "Just pondering the unexpected twists life throws our way, Mark. I never imagined John could be a distant relative." As the day of the DNA test results drew near, Julia's anxiety heightened. Regardless of the outcome, she knew that she and John were already deeply connected. Yet, the prospect of a blood tie stirred a mix of anticipation and apprehension within her. "Regardless of the test, John is a part of our family," she assured Mark and Simon, who nodded in understanding. They were prepared to embrace John as kin, irrespective of the outcome. One day, Mark rushed into the room, visibly agitated, clutching a set of papers. "Julia, you won't believe this. Sit down," he urged, handing her the test results. "John is your biological son, with a 99% probability." Stunned, Julia struggled to comprehend. "But the baby who died at the maternity wasn't my son. My child has been alive all this time, and who was I married to then? How could this have happened?" Overhearing the conversation, John was bewildered by the revelations. "So, you're my real mother?" he asked incredulously. "This is unbelievable. And Jennifer, the woman I thought was my mother, isn't actually my mom." Julia held John tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It seems you are indeed my real son, my dear. I'm overjoyed to have found you alive. They told me you had passed away. Please forgive me, I didn't know. We'll uncover the truth about what happened. I promise I'll never leave you again, my little ray of sunshine." In the subsequent legal proceedings, Julia was officially recognized as John's biological mother, and Jennifer, the neglectful mother, lost her parental rights. When Jennifer realized she would lose her benefits, she suddenly remembered John, begging for him to return, feigning love and longing. However, John remembered the mistreatment and neglect vividly. He was grateful for the love of his new parents, Juliet and Mark, and was determined to bring happiness to their lives. After an extensive investigation, detectives unraveled the mystery behind the disappearance of Julia's son. They discovered that Lucia, in a cruel and desperate act, had swapped Julia's newborn with Jennifer's deceased baby at the hospital. Both women had given birth on the same day, facilitating the malicious exchange. Shocked by this revelation, Julia demanded answers. How is this possible? Why is Lucia not in prison? She should be held accountable along with Octavio. I need to confront her, look her in the eyes, and ask why she ruined my life and my son's. The detective, with a grave expression, informed her, life has its own way of meting out justice. Lucia is now confined to an asylum, battling a terminal illness. She spends her days alone, without visitors, enduring immense suffering, and to complete the picture, Octavio succumbed to tuberculosis in prison. These words made Julia realize that, in some way, Lucia was already facing the consequences of her actions, isolated and forgotten in her final days. Upon arriving home, Julia was greeted by a heartwarming scene. Simon and John were engrossed in a playful game, while the savory aroma of Mark's tortilla filled the air. Their faces lit up at the sight of her. "Mom, you're back. We missed you. Is everything okay?" "You look a bit worried," John remarked, perceptive to Julia's expression. Seated at the table with her beloved family, Julia opened up about her emotions. "Today, I'm reminded of how incredibly blessed I am. I have 2 amazing sons, a husband who's my rock, and a fulfilling job. I truly feel fortunate." As Mark served dinner, he chimed in, "I'm glad you recognize our blessings. Remember, we're always here for you." The dinner conversation was animated, filled with laughter and dreams for the future. John, now fully integrated into the family, shared in the joy. In their home, where love prevailed, everything felt harmonious. Together, they had weathered storms and overcome obstacles. Now, with the shadows of the past behind them, they looked forward to a future brimming with happiness and unity. Their life, rich with love and companionship, marched onward, leaving darkness behind and paving the way for days of joy and fulfillment. If you enjoyed this story, we'd appreciate a like and a subscribe to our channel. Your support enables us to continue sharing incredible stories almost daily. Don't miss out on the next captivating tale coming your way. Thank you for being a part of our journey. Until next time.
My uncle urged me to peer through the gap in the stairs. My 4-year-old niece tugged at my sleeve as I hesitated. In front of me lay my husband, unconscious and still on a hospital bed. A week ago, he had been stabbed during a confrontation with a burglar who was still on the run. Upon returning home, my niece's peculiar words echoed in my mind. I decided to check the stairs, and there, in a tiny crevice, I found something bloodied. A shiver ran down my spine in surprise. Could it be someone unexpectedly familiar, possibly the culprit? Fear gripped me. I work in administration at a real estate agency. Last year, I tied the knot with Michael, one of our salesmen, after an office romance. Both of us are 25 years old, and our shared motto was, "We want kids soon." The reason behind this was my sister, and her child Emma, who is incredibly adorable. Whenever I see my 4-year-old niece giggling or pouting, I imagine ourselves as parents. Little Emma possesses a mysterious ability. Aunt Sophia, your ring is on the bookshelf. Whenever I misplaced something, my niece would pinpoint its location, not just once but repeatedly. Even my sister said, when in trouble, ask Emma. Somehow, good things happen. Children are said to see ghosts, but I wonder if there's something more to it. Perhaps our future child will also have special abilities. We dreamt of a family with children. However, our newlywed life didn't go smoothly. Shortly after getting married, we started receiving disturbing letters at home addressed to Michael. The words written on them were chilling: break up and disappear. Despite Michael dismissing it as a malicious prank and filing a police report, the identity of the letter sender remained unknown. Our days were filled with anxiety. One day, James, Michael's colleague, visited the General Affairs Department where I worked. It was unusual for someone from the sales department to visit me. When I approached James, he handed me a piece of paper with the same threatening words, "disappear" and "esser," scribbled on it. I gasped, and James looked serious. As a rising star in the sales department, Michael had made enemies, and it was troubling. James crumpled the paper in his hand and said, "I've known Michael since we joined the company. If anything happens, feel free to consult with me." He smiled kindly, offering support in the face of the mysterious threats we were facing. I never anticipated finding Michael in such a dire situation, but having an ally is reassuring. My sister also visited our home, concerned about us despite the unsettling letters. With support from those around us, we stood strong, determined not to let the harassment defeat us. I resolved to stand by Michael. Little did we know what was about to happen. My sister called me in a panic, urging me to come back immediately. It was a Saturday, and Michael, who was supposed to be home after working overtime, was unconscious. I received her call while attending a friend's wedding. Rushing to the hospital, I found Michael lying pale-faced on the bed. I pleaded with him to wake up, gripping his hand, but he remained motionless. The room echoed with the rhythmic beeping of machines, and tears streamed down my face. I wondered why this was happening. My sister, who had been waiting in the room, comforted me. According to the police, our neighbor had discovered Michael collapsed at home with a stab wound. The neighbor had come to deliver a community newsletter and, as usual, opened our front door without hesitation. Fortunately, this act led to the early discovery of my husband. Given the recent spate of burglaries in the neighborhood, the police suspected it might be the work of the burglar. I believed it was the same person who sent those threatening letters. I fervently explained this to my sister, but she interrupted, insisting that she would handle the explanation to the police. She advised me to take a break. I lamented, thinking that if only I hadn't gone to that wedding, maybe Michael would be safe. I prayed for his recovery, but even after a week, he remained unconscious. The perpetrator was still at large. In the hospital room, I spoke to my husband, connected to numerous tubes. There was no response. No matter how hard I tried to hold back tears, they flowed uncontrollably. It was challenging to stay positive, even when people encouraged me to. Turning around, I found James, who had been checking on Michael every day, offering flowers and treats to comfort me. I apologized for showing him such an embarrassing sight. I hastily wiped away my tears, but James leaned in and reassured me, "Don't worry about it." Just then, an innocent voice came from behind. "Aunt Sophia, who's this?" I looked back, and my niece Emma stood there, tilting her head curiously. It was her first time visiting. "Oh, come on," my sister said curtly to Emma and then greeted James. "I apologize for intruding on your family. Well, I'll leave you all to it." With a brief nod to my sister, James placed the flowers down and left the room. Sorry for the sudden visit. Emma insisted on coming to see Michael. My sister looked apologetic, but Emma paid no attention. She stood by the bed, staring intently at Michael's face. "Uncle is saying, look into the gap in the stairs. A barge is there." My niece suddenly blurted out, a mysterious statement from behind. "A barge? You mean those large ships that transport goods at the harbor? And it's under the stairs." However, my sister insisted that Emma might have something important to say. She was dead serious. As we continued visiting, hours at the hospital passed, and my sister drove me home. Before parting ways, she said, "Call me if anything happens." But seriously, was there really a gap under the stairs? I retraced my memories, unlocked the front door, and headed toward the staircase. During the incident, Michael had been found collapsed on the stairs, covered in blood. The police had collected evidence and cleaned up. Everything was already in pristine condition. There's a gap at the edge of the bottom step. I noticed a faint trace of red blood. I shone my flashlight inside and saw something reflecting, glinting in the light. I quickly grabbed some tweezers and pulled it out. It turned out to be something unexpected. Isn't this a company badge? In our company, everyone wears a badge with a company logo as an employee ID. The familiar badge was dried and stained with a significant amount of blood. It must have been squeezed into the gap because of the blood. Come to think of it, the police mentioned an unnatural scratch on Michael's fingertip. Could he have pushed something into the gap? The hidden company badge might be a message from Michael, indicating who the culprit is. I immediately called my sister. See, something was found after all. Let's go together to report it to the police, I suggested as my sister bustled around on the other end of the phone. I heard my niece's voice. If there's no barge, you need later. It's troublesome for one person who's being a nuisance. What another riddle is this? Another clue related to the case? I leaned forward, asking, but all I heard from the phone was Emma's giggles. Emma had accurately guessed something about the space under the stairs, and I suspected this riddle held a clue to the perpetrator. I stared at the blood-stained company badge in my palm. Michael must have left a crucial clue in his desperate struggle, enduring immense pain until he lost consciousness. I won't let Michael's message go to waste. I'll catch the criminal. I vowed to uncover the cowardly perpetrator and seek revenge. Later, I promptly delivered the badge to the police and went to visit my niece. If there's no barge, you need later. It's troublesome for one person who's being a nuisance. Emma's words intrigued me. I asked her for more details. Hey Emma, what does it mean when you say I need a barge later? Is it too late? Emma shook her head. No, not like that. I'm still puzzled. When you say it's troublesome for one person who's being a nuisance, are you talking about the number of people? Would 2 people be less of a nuisance? No, that's still too many. It's about being bothersome. My niece wore a smug expression, but the mystery only deepened. I had no idea what she was talking about, and I let out a groan. My sister, equally puzzled, hemmed. There must be some meaning to it. Despite her uncertainty, I decided to leave her house and head to a cafe to clear my thoughts. As I sipped my coffee and pondered, a man in a suit sitting at the adjacent table stood up, leaving his smartphone behind. Excuse me, you've forgotten your phone, I called out. He hurried back, relieved, and replied, Thank you. It's my work phone, and losing it would mean writing an incident report. At that moment, something clicked in my mind. Finally, the answer to the riddle became clear. I dashed back to my workplace. What followed was a whirlwind of events that revealed the truth. 5 days later, I found myself in a hospital room with my unconscious husband. It's been a while. Why did you take 5 days off work? He asked, stirring from his slumber. I didn't see you at the hospital either. I was worried, James said during his visit, ignoring the bouquet he offered. I looked him straight in the eyes and quietly asked, despite being so close to my husband, why did you stab him? James's face turned pale at my sudden accusation. What are you talking about? Isn't the culprit a burglar? He smiled kindly as always, trying to play it off. I took the blood-stained company badge I found under the stairs out of my pocket and showed it to him. Is that our company's badge? The Lear my niece mentioned wasn't a ship at the harbor. It referred to the company badge. We've been receiving harassing letters at home, and my husband hid the company badge to reveal the culprit. The culprit isn't a burglar. It's someone close within the company, I said, looking at James with conviction. You're not seriously suspecting me, are you? After all I've done to care for you. He reached for my hand with a strained smile. I pushed away his hand and showed him a copy of his disciplinary report that I found in HR. Emma's statement about needing a barge later meant needing the letter of apology to the company because he lost his badge. 2 days after my husband was stabbed, he wrote the incident report. Could that be Michael's company badge? His badge was properly at home. I swiftly dismissed his feeble excuse. James clenched his lips in frustration, but he wasn't giving up. You're shaken because of Michael's stabbing. From now on, I'll be there for you in Michael's place. His unfocused eyes drew closer. I deftly sidestepped him and pulled out documents from my bag. It was the drive recorder data from the company car he always used. You came to our place at the time of the incident, even though there are no business partners nearby, right? As the data manager for the company's drive recorders, I quickly analyzed James's movements during the incident. Perhaps he had considered erasing the data later, but the company car's recorder was locked to prevent unauthorized tampering. Did you have feelings for me? I asked, watching James squirm. After questioning other colleagues, it became clear that James had secretly harbored feelings for me all along. Furthermore, it was revealed that James resented Michael for supposedly stealing me away from him. Emma's riddle. It's troublesome for one person who's being a nuisance. Meant that if someone already had a spouse, Michael's presence would be an obstacle to their marriage. You held a grudge and harassed us, fearing we might get divorced. That's disgusting. James clenched his fists in anger at my use of the word disgusting. I liked you much more than Michael ever did. I thought scaring you would lead to a breakup. He stomped his feet in frustration. Since the letters alone weren't effective, I decided to put a weapon in your mailbox. I thought it would wake you up in fear. Unfortunately for him, Michael unexpectedly returned home earlier than planned and caught James in the act of pulling out the knife. James's stomping intensified as he arrogantly accused me of being the culprit. Do you realize how terrified Sophia is? He warned me never to come near his wife again. So, in your anger, you've used the knife you were holding to stab my husband. Yeah, that's right. It was all for you. Now I just need to finish him off. James defiantly rushed toward the bed, attempting to strangle Michael. Desperate to protect my husband, I grappled with James. Then, unexpectedly, Michael's weak voice cut through the chaos. Enough already. James froze momentarily at the unexpected interruption, seizing the opportunity. I pushed James with all my strength, and he crashed into the door with a loud thud. The curtain he grabbed tore apart, and the hospital staff rushed in, alarmed by the strange noise echoing through the halls. Call the police? I shouted. The staff gathered around, helping restrain James and making emergency calls. Later, when the police arrived, and I explained everything, they took James into custody. He cried out in desperation. We were so close to being happy. What nonsense are you spouting? There was never any chance of happiness for you. I stared at James, pushing him away with a resolute tone. I've loved you all along. I really have. James continued to sob like a child, but his selfish claims held no sway. The only person I love is my husband. Stay away from me forever, I told him sternly. As James was led away by the police, he muttered. Later, Michael regained consciousness and testified against James, leading to his conviction. James would spend about 7 years behind bars. Michael demanded $115,000 in compensation. Even if James were released, losing his job would likely cause financial hardship. As for me today, I invited my sister and Emma over for lunch with Michael. As we sat around the table, my niece grinned and said, "The new chair isn't just one, it's two." My husband and I exchanged glances. It seems I'm pregnant with twins. I'll need to visit the obstetrician soon. How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Until next time.
3 years ago, Nick tied the knot with Jolie. Frankly, had it not been for her unexpected inheritance of the family business following her father's untimely demise, Nick might never have walked down the aisle with her. Mr. McMillan, once robust and seemingly invincible, succumbed to a sudden stroke, leaving Jolie as his sole heir. Nick, a charming but idle individual accustomed to leeching off women, couldn't help but take notice. Jolie, swayed by Nick's smooth talk and promises, fell under his spell, while Nick saw in her a golden opportunity, his plan. To buy his time until something more lucrative came along. As luck would have it, Jolie's inheritance turned out to be the golden ticket Nick had been waiting for. With her newfound wealth, she became his jackpot. Nick, confident in his ability to manipulate her growing affection, envisioned controlling her fortune for his own gain. Initially, Nick's scheme unfolded smoothly. Jolie, engulfed in grief over her father's passing, leaned on Nick for support, oblivious to his ulterior motives. Nick seized the moment, showering Jolie with care and attention during her time of need, all the while concealing his true intentions. He kept up his facade until they exchanged vows, ensuring there was no turning back. After the funeral, Nick proposed marriage, suggesting they wait until Jolie had mourned her father properly. However, when Jolie questioned the necessity of a prenuptial agreement, Nick's true colors began to emerge. "Nick, is this just a business move?" Jolie queried, echoing the sentiments of Mr. Chinland, her father's trusted advisor. "It's humiliating." "Do you think I'm only after your money?" she protested. Nick, taken aback by her defiance, responded defensively, "Honey, it's merely a precaution. We need it just in case. My godfather insists on it. He's always looked out for me, like a second father." Though Jolie's understanding of financial matters might have been lacking due to her privileged upbringing, she possessed a tenacity that transcended her naivety. When she set her sights on a goal, she pursued it relentlessly. Nick, finding himself backed into a corner, begrudgingly acquiesced to all of Mr. Chin's conditions. While the terms of the marriage contract seemed standard, they effectively stripped Nick of any entitlements. It was abundantly clear that Jolie's inherited business and assets would remain solely hers. Nick had assumed he'd have a share in the dividends and the opportunity to amass new wealth. However, the meticulous contract drawn up by a top-tier lawyer dashed those hopes. Despite this setback, Nick convinced himself that the marriage still held benefits. He saw it as a means to tap into his wife's finances without oversight, building his own capital for the future. He planned to siphon money from their joint budget daily, funneling it into his own accounts. Yet Nick's optimism was misplaced once again. Mr. Chinland, a principled and responsible figure, not only oversaw Jolie's business finances but also controlled her personal wealth. Nick found himself restricted in his personal spending, but he remained hopeful, anticipating how the situation might unfold. His patience was eventually rewarded. Despite their efforts, Jolie struggled to conceive, her desire for motherhood overshadowed by repeated disappointment. Initially attributing it to stress, she eventually sought medical intervention after over a year of failed attempts, uncovering the underlying cause of their struggles. Jolie's symptoms, initially dismissed as mere consequences of her busy lifestyle, were ominous signs that her body was in distress, a warning she had chosen to ignore. Eventually, the grim truth emerged. She was diagnosed with cancer. Over nearly 2 grueling years, she endured treatments and suffering with little to show for it. Throughout this ordeal, Nick's role as a husband was merely nominal. His vested interest lay in Jolie's existence being inconsequential, a fact he failed to conceal adequately. While the topic remained unspoken, Jolie couldn't ignore the whispers of her husband's infidelities with numerous other women. Nick, however, fancied himself a master of deception and manipulation. He believed he could convincingly play the part of the devoted spouse to a dying wife without raising suspicion. He considered himself fortunate, convinced that enduring a little longer would secure his desired outcome. Yet Nick's reprehensible conduct became the subject of condemnation and gossip among nurses, hospital staff, and even Mr. Chinland. The latter was both furious and helpless, unable to comprehend Jolie's insistence on preserving a marriage teetering on the brink. Furthermore, the absence of a will left him deeply concerned, as it meant Nick would automatically inherit everything as Jolie's sole heir. That scoundrel stands to inherit everything, including the fruits of Jolie and her father's hard work. It would render everything they've built futile, Mr. Chinland lamented. The elderly man found himself grappling with the delicate task of broaching a sensitive subject with his goddaughter, who, until just yesterday, had exuded health and vitality but now faced an inevitable decline. With each passing moment, her time grew shorter, measured not in months but in weeks. Meanwhile, Nick's anticipation burned bright, his greedy ambitions unmasked in his eager demeanor. He saw in Jolie's looming demise not just tragedy but opportunity, a chance to rid himself of his ailing wife and secure a substantial windfall. Mr. Chinland silently prayed that he wouldn't have to initiate the discussion about Jolie's will himself. Fortunately, his concerns were unfounded. Jolie took the initiative, revealing a secret plan that left him speechless. Her meticulous plotting, executed with a finesse and ruthlessness he never anticipated, served as a chilling reminder that revenge truly is a dish best served cold. Though Jolie's scheme required little time and effort to devise and execute, it marked the culmination of her earthly journey, allowing her to realize her deepest desires. Sadly, her loved ones did not witness a miraculous recovery. Instead, they bid farewell to Jolie as she passed away, her funeral arrangements meticulously planned and communicated with serene determination, ensuring her final wishes were carried out with precision. The day following the somber farewell ceremony, the notary summoned those named in Jolie's will for its official reading. Nick was taken aback by the unexpected news. He had been convinced that his wife had not taken the precaution of drafting such a document, assuming he would naturally inherit everything, as the law often dictates in such circumstances. Nonetheless, clinging to a glimmer of hope, he reluctantly attended the meeting, accompanied by his new mistress, the stunning Shirley. Upon entering the notary's office, Nick was surprised to find Mr. Chinland and Jolie's friend, Kurt Turgan, in attendance. However, what truly caught him off guard was the sight of Kurt pushing a stroller containing a baby boy. Despite being aware of Kurt's marital status and recent parenthood, Nick's astute instincts quickly pieced together the puzzle, revealing a hidden agenda at play, a realization that left him feeling outwitted. Nevertheless, curiosity compelled Nick to stay and discover the contents of Jolie's will, despite his growing apprehension about its potential humiliation. For what felt like an eternity, silence enveloped the room as each individual occupied their own corner, waiting in tense anticipation. No further attendees arrived, leaving the notary to prolong the preamble, emphasizing the solemnity of the occasion and the honor of carrying out the deceased's final wishes. Even then, Nick could discern from the wicked grin etched on Mr. Chinland's face that the contents of the will were a clandestine affair reserved solely for him. Finally, Nick's name was called. "To my lawful husband Nick, I deny the inheritance," declared the notary, the words ringing with a stark finality. As the brief yet impactful sentence echoed in the room, the notary turned to Nick, prompting him to confirm his understanding of its significance. With a heavy heart and a sense of profound humiliation, Nick could only nod in acquiescence. In that moment, Shirley reached for his hand, ready to defiantly depart, but Nick firmly kept her in place, ignoring her questioning gaze. Though every fiber of his being urged him to flee from the scene of his public disgrace, the drama was far from over, and the invited spectators demanded closure. With a measured pause, the notary continued. "I bequeath all my personal property to my only son, Robert Turgis, until he reaches adulthood. I appoint his father, Kurt Turgan, and Mr. Chinland as guardians and administrators of his estate," announced the notary, dropping a bombshell that reverberated through Nick like a devastating blow to the gut. The revelation of Kurt's paternity shattered Nick's patience, eliciting a shocked cry of disbelief. Yet, aside from Nick and Shirley, the revelation elicited no surprise from the assembled witnesses. "Is the boy Jolie's biological child?" Nick's voice trembled as he gasped for breath, his words punctuated by desperation. "Yes, Robert is the biological son of Jolie and Kurt," Mr. Chinland confirmed, his tone resolute. "She hasn't been pregnant in the last 2 years. It's impossible." Nick grasped at straws, though he knew all too well that modern science had rendered pregnancy unnecessary for parenthood. "The marvels of medical progress never cease to amaze," Mr. Chinland remarked, observing the unfolding scene with a mix of pity and detachment. For Kurt, the memories of 2 years prior flooded back, a chilling reminder of the moment he learned of his best friend's grim prognosis. He marveled at her composure as she calmly discussed her limited time and her unwavering determination to fulfill her maternal longing. "I had my eggs preserved before beginning treatment," she had revealed, her resolve unyielding in the face of adversity. "I was told that I probably wouldn't be able to raise my own child, but I insisted, Kurt. I grew up without a mother, and I know it isn't easy, but I always felt her love and protection." "Does Nick agree to raise the child alone?" Kurt cautiously inquired. "Who would allow him? He would gladly become a guardian and use the baby's money, as he lacks conscience," Jolie replied bitterly. "No, I've already realized that my dear spouse is someone of questionable character, to put it correctly, and his reaction to my diagnosis and prognosis. I don't even want to speak about him. This man isn't worth getting upset about." "And what of the baby?" "That's what I wanted to discuss with you." Jolie hesitated, a rare moment of uncertainty for her fearless demeanor. "I don't know how to broach the subject delicately. Maybe there is no delicate way. In short, I would like you to be the father of my child," she exclaimed in a high-pitched voice. "Are you joking? You have a husband." Kurt clearly wasn't prepared for this sudden proposition. "Yes, I do have a husband, and I will have him until the day I die. I've already made that decision, Kurt. Of course, we won't sleep together. It's impossible given my current condition. I can't carry the baby myself. Unfortunately, I have my eggs preserved." Now we need the biological material from the future father. Naturally, I also need a woman to carry and give birth to him, but luckily, such services are available now. Initially dismissing it as absurd, Kurt soon realized that Jolie's plan was meticulously thought out, with every detail carefully considered. She had already undertaken extensive preparatory work, delving into the legal aspects, arranging for services at a reproductive clinic, and even securing a surrogate mother for the future baby. Kurt, I could use the services of a donor for the father for the baby. I really want to leave a piece of myself behind. But when you think about it, who will the baby be with? I've been thinking a lot, but you're the only one I can rely on. I am sure of you, knowing you for so many years. I believe that you will be a great father. I understand that you want to create your own family, get married, and have children naturally. It's logical. But please think about it. Don't answer me right now. For me, after what happened with Nick, it is critical that the father of my child is someone who doesn't prioritize money, someone who won't exploit my assets. I'm not as naive as I was before marriage. Nick taught me a lot. Now I have a lot of life experience. As for you, you don't need any money at all. You have plenty. My father has the money, Kurt interjected, correcting Jolie's line of reasoning for the first time. You know you're going to get it. You worked tirelessly to keep the family company thriving. You've never been needy. Now I know for a fact that a man who grew up poor will never stop thinking about having enough to eat. And if his decency is also lacking, there will be a big problem. I have experienced that firsthand, Jolie sadly added. To be honest, I'm completely confused. I had an entirely different idea of becoming a father. I need to consult my parents, understand that I can't make such a decision alone. I will need the help of close family members when I become a father, so I have to inform them and ask for their opinion. Jolie had no objections, but she requested that Kurt promise to keep their arrangement a secret. The conversation with Kurt's parents proved challenging. His father remained neutral, accepting the situation and promising to support his son's decision and assist with his grandchild as much as possible. His mother, however, struggled with the idea. Like any mother, she wished for her son to marry and have children with a good woman. While she held Jolie in high regard and felt immense sympathy for her, the thought of her potential grandchild being born to another woman, especially with Jolie's illness, was difficult for her to accept. Could the child inherit the disease, she asked, the question lingering uncomfortably in the air. Though hesitant to broach such a sensitive topic, she couldn't ignore the potential risks to her grandchild's health. Jolie does not have a hereditary form of the disease, Kurt reassured her, alleviating some of her anxiety, though not entirely. After careful consideration, she expressed her support for her son's decision, albeit with lingering concerns. Kurt himself grappled with uncertainty. Jolie's proposal had caught him off guard, but after much contemplation, he found no reason to refuse. When he conveyed his approval to Jolie, she was overjoyed, and they began to execute her plan methodically. As Kurt reflected on the profound changes unfolding in his life, Mr. Chinlin reminisced about his conversation with Jolie just over 2 months prior. Beginning with expressions of her respect and admiration for him as a father figure, she eventually revealed her request for him to become her son's guardian. Initially dismissing it as delirium, Mr. Chinland was left in shock as Jolie detailed the entirety of her plan. Not only had she and Kurt made a bold decision, but they had also managed to keep it hidden for so long. How old is the baby now? Mr. Chinland inquired. Robert is 8 months old. Jolie beamed. You both truly know how to surprise, Mr. Chinland remarked, still reeling from the shock. I don't want Nick to find out about the child until after I'm gone. He'll only learn of it when my will is read. It's already been drawn up, and is in the hands of the notary. However, there's one aspect we still need to address. Robert will only have one legal guardian. Upon reevaluating many aspects of my life, I've decided not to leave anything to chance. Kurt has parents, so if anything were to happen to him, Robert would go to them. But I want you to have legal rights as well. Just in case. With his keen understanding of people, the elderly man recognized the potential danger in confronting Nick directly, even though Jolie's husband undoubtedly deserved such treatment. In the hushed atmosphere of the notary's office, everyone was lost in their own thoughts. It was clear to see that Nick was cursing Jolie in every possible manner. People like him often fail to grasp that their own actions may have provoked such responses. Introspection of that kind is often too complex for individuals like him. Why bother looking for faults within oneself? Strangely enough, it was Shirley who broke the silence. She attempted to guide her lover out by the elbow. But Nick had no intention of leaving, feeling compelled to voice his grievances. "Are you certain I'm entitled to nothing? No obligatory share or whatever it's called? I am her husband after all." Nick's voice rose in protest. "As per the will, you're not listed among the beneficiaries entitled to an obligatory share of the inheritance. Furthermore, I've meticulously reviewed your marriage contract. Its contents are enclosed here." The notary indicated the hefty folder before him with a firm tap. "You have slim chances even with a legal challenge, though you naturally retain the right to pursue such action." "I'll contest it. Who is this illegitimate child anyway? And who's to say he's really her son?" Nick's outburst escalated, oblivious to the weight of his words. Kurt struggled to contain his anger, fighting the urge to strike the arrogant man. Even the typically composed Mr. Chinlin flushed with indignation. Only the notary remained as composed as ever, treating the situation as just another day at the office, unfazed by the drama unfolding before him. "Can I see?" Nick demanded to examine the evidence. "No. You're only entitled to review the portion relevant to you. All other documents, particularly those concerning the child, can only be disclosed with the parent's consent naturally," the notary clarified. "I do not consent," Kurt interjected firmly. "So, access to those documents would only be possible through a court proceeding if the court deems it necessary to request them." That was the breaking point. Nick stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him, determined not to let the matter rest. His mistress, however, bid farewell politely and exited quietly, closing the door behind her. "Does it matter that he didn't sign the will?" Mr. Chinland inquired of the notary. "There are many like him. It's merely a formality," the notary reassured him. "It's almost comical if it weren't so tragic. I still can't fathom how Jolie got mixed up with him." Mr. Chinlin mused aloud, his thoughts lingering in the air as a rhetorical question. With the required paperwork swiftly signed and hands shaken, Mr. Chinlin assisted Kurt in settling little Robert into the stroller. "Would you care to join us? I could use some fresh air, and it's good for the baby," Kurt invited. "Certainly, I'll join you for a while." They walked in silence, the gentle rustle of the stroller wheels providing a soothing backdrop. "Do you think Jolie would approve of how I'm handling everything?" Kurt finally voiced the question that had been weighing on his mind. "I'm certain she would. You're proving to be a remarkable father, and the bond between you and Robert is undeniable," Jolie's godfather reassured him. "Truth be told, there's something that's been nagging at me. You know, I have a feeling Jolie mentioned to you that I had advised against what transpired at the notary's office," Mr. Chinlin brought up. "Are you referring to the whole debacle with the will and Nick finding out about Robert?" Mr. Chinlin nodded in acknowledgement. "Of course," Kurt replied. "I was the one who constantly brought up the conversation about that. I didn't like this idea from the very beginning. He's a nasty type, angry, stupid, and mercenary. Why provoke him? Honestly, I even contemplated telling him when the baby was already born. But Jolie was so adamant about keeping it a secret, I felt I had no right to interfere. I thought perhaps she just didn't want to deal with him herself and left these disputes to us. Seeing him today with that woman, shamelessly flaunting it, makes me question whether I made the right decision by not standing my ground." His reaction, the look on his face, it was chilling. Maybe it would have been better to confront him earlier. I believe Jolie didn't want to either. It played a part too, and the desire for revenge. She wanted to get back at him because she loved, regardless of what she claimed later. She loved deeply, and this corrupted love left her no other recourse. "My poor girl," the elderly man wiped away a tear trickling down his cheek. "Don't grieve for her. She asked us not to. She asked us to direct all our love, which was for her to Robbie," Kurt comforted Jolie's godfather, while the others reminisced. Meanwhile, Nick and Shirley observed from the car, discussing the same topic. "So you won't get anything at all, huh?" the girl asked incredulously, blinking rapidly. "You're such a fool. You heard there's no chance because of this baby. All right, let's go. We need to salvage at least something valuable and move it to my place." 3 days later, Kurt finally gathered the courage to visit Jolie's house, only to find it deserted. He had prepared himself for a confrontation, even hiring 2 security guards for protection. But Nick had anticipated his move and already absconded with plenty of valuables. Now Nick sat alone in the cramped confines of his tiny apartment, nursing a dwindling glass of whiskey that surely had left him, a predictable gesture. Why would she need a loser like me? Nick mused, reflecting on how he had ended up in this dismal state. Once, women paid him for his company, but now he found himself offering money to a young, beautiful girl just to keep her around. Ironically, Nick, a gigolo past his prime, withered by his vices, refused to shoulder the blame for his circumstances. In his mind, his wife was the villain who had drained him of vitality and crushed his dreams, leaving him without the inheritance he had so eagerly anticipated. In his fantasies, he was young, handsome, successful, and fabulously wealthy. Yet Shirley's parting words had shattered these illusions. He was nothing more than a destitute drunkard lost in delusions of grandeur. Accepting this reality was a bitter pill to swallow. His grand visions of wealth and success, hinging largely on his ex-wife, crumbled like a house of cards. His aspirations of becoming a successful entrepreneur were dashed. Blinded by his pride, he failed to acknowledge his own role in his downfall. Instead, he directed his resentment towards his late wife, seeing her as the source of all his woes. For nearly 2 weeks, Nick drowned himself in a haze of alcohol, seeking solace from his harsh reality, his bitterness festering with each passing day. Then, one bleak morning, gripped by a pounding hangover, he reached a breaking point. He realized that drowning his sorrows in alcohol wouldn't bring him success or vengeance against Julie. Nick felt a profound sense of humiliation. A few days prior, representatives from Mr. Chinlin had appeared, practically strong-arming Nick into surrendering his car keys and tearing up the power of attorney that Julie had granted him. "Did you not realize that the power of attorney loses its legal validity after the death of the grantor?" one of the men remarked, his tone dripping with disdain. In Nick's mind, he painted himself as a saint who had never left his ailing wife's side. Conveniently, he brushed aside his own endless scheming, gambling habits, alcohol abuse, and dismissive treatment of his wife. "How unfortunate that she's dead, and I can't lash out at her," he had thought countless times. I barely suppressed my urge, convincing myself that my patience would be richly rewarded. Now, as he contemplated his next move, thoughts of revenge consumed him. Initially, he had entertained the idea of desecrating her grave. But upon reflection, considering what was most precious to Jolie and what would inflict the deepest anguish, he stumbled upon another answer. Robert. A surge of electricity coursed through Nick as this idea took hold in his mind. He chuckled maliciously, finally concocting his revenge plot. While many details needed ironing out, he had settled on one crucial point: he would not harm Robert. What's a mother's worst nightmare? Not being able to protect her child in times of trouble. That's precisely the fate he planned for. His imagination was ablaze with a simple yet sinister plan: to abduct the baby, whisk him away to a distant location, and abandon him at an orphanage. After a week of dwelling on thoughts of revenge, Nick found solace and satisfaction in his fantasies, if one could call them that. He hadn't smiled like this in ages. Granted, the grimace he wore might have been unsettling to some, but Jolie's husband cared little for appearances. In fact, you could say he was elated as he meticulously plotted every detail. He reveled in a sense of euphoria. Although his target was out of sight, Nick savored the mental image of Jolie's anguish at her inability to protect her child. Once he had outlined his plan in theory, Nick shifted his focus to practicalities. He needed to gather intelligence on Robert's movements and the people he encountered outside the house to pinpoint the perfect time and place for his crime. Having known Kurt well in the past, and even having visited his parents' house, Nick was aware of their affluent suburban community and its heightened security. As he delved deeper into his scheme, he became acutely aware of the obstacles he would face. He couldn't predict how long he'd spend surveilling from the cover of the forest, peering through binoculars, studying the child's routines and activities. Was the risk worth the reward? Without a doubt, Nick reasoned with himself. His mental state had deteriorated significantly since the reading of the will. "She destroyed my life, and I'll destroy her child's," he muttered maliciously. In his twisted fantasies, Nick envisioned himself as a wealthy heir living off the state's provisions, while his deceased mother looked on from the afterlife, bearing the weight of blame for his misdeeds. His laughter echoed with malice, a chilling sound that would have alarmed any bystander with a shred of empathy. But history does not entertain what-ifs, and Nick was left unchecked in his pursuit of his dark ambitions. Once he set his mind on a goal, no matter how sinister, he pursued it relentlessly to its conclusion. For 2 full days, Nick didn't just watch but meticulously prepared the groundwork for his scheme. He scoured the entire area, seeking the perfect vantage point that would afford him an unobstructed view of the settlement, particularly the Turgis household, while keeping him concealed. He poured all his energy and time into finding the ideal spot, ensuring it met his stringent criteria. Day after day, he rose with the dawn, immersing himself in surveillance at the cottage settlement until nightfall. With binoculars in hand, he meticulously documented every movement, noting arrivals and departures with unwavering diligence. Through his observations, Nick learned that the child was under the care of Kurt's grandmother and a nanny. Both Kurt and his mother were unsuitable targets for Nick's plans. They would recognize him immediately. Nick had no intention of facing consequences for his actions. Anticipating police inquiries, he aimed to deflect suspicion away from himself. Thus, he identified the nanny as the target of his scheme. She followed a predictable schedule, walking with Robert along familiar routes at set times. Luck seemed to smile upon Nick when, on a Wednesday, the nanny ventured beyond the settlement's secured confines for a daytime stroll with the sleeping baby. She followed a forest path to a clearing where she met another nanny from a neighboring settlement, her laughter carrying through the air. Recognizing an opportunity, Nick decided to limit his visits to the settlement to Wednesdays, minimizing the risk of drawing attention to himself. His plan was meticulous, akin to a well-oiled machine. Each Wednesday, like clockwork, the nanny ventured into the forest. For 4 consecutive weeks, Nick observed this routine, ensuring its consistency. As the 4th Wednesday approached, he knew the time had come to execute his sinister plan, confident in its precision and success. He acquired a potent stun gun from a local market, exchanging cash to evade detection. Every aspect of his plan was meticulously arranged to minimize the risk of capture. Securing an old car, he appropriated license plates, ensuring they were affixed inconspicuously. He strategically positioned the vehicle for a swift getaway, yet far enough to evade suspicion. Disguising his appearance was paramount, taking precautions to obscure his features and physique to evade identification. Obsessed with thoughts of kidnapping, he became consumed by them, even dreaming of the deed in vivid detail. As the fateful day drew near, he shed nearly 7 kilograms, a physical manifestation of his preoccupation. A haunting aura of neurosis and fixation began to manifest in his countenance, a visible testament to his unraveling psyche. On the appointed Wednesday, he parked in his chosen spot, his nerves taut with anticipation. As he spied the nanny guiding the stroller down the path, a tremor of apprehension coursed through him. The meticulous planning had insulated him from the grim reality of his impending actions. He was poised to confront a stranger, to assault her with a stun gun, and to wrest the child from the safety of the stroller, all in a desperate bid to enact his vengeful scheme. Reality shattered his preconceived notions, starkly contrasting the simulated scenarios of his imagination. Here, everything was palpably real. The unsuspecting woman, the innocent child nestled in the stroller, his gaze filled with innocent wonder. Nick was not inherently predisposed to violence, but his festering animosity towards Jolie propelled him across the threshold of moral restraint. Approaching the nanny, he forcefully pushed her away from the stroller, causing her to stumble and fall. He then unleashed the taser's jolt upon her, rendering her unconscious with a single shock. With trembling hands, he moved to extract the child from the confines of the stroller, his heart racing with adrenaline-fueled urgency. Yet, his meticulously crafted scheme was abruptly derailed. As he leaned down to undo the child's restraints, a sudden blow struck his head, sending him reeling to the ground in a dizzying haze of confusion. The next thing Nick knew, he found himself subdued by an elderly man standing over him, scolding Nick while deftly binding his hands. Nick's consciousness slipped away once more. It turned out that the mysterious figure was none other than Mr. Mayo, a respected gamekeeper renowned in the nearby elite communities. His guardhouse, nestled inconspicuously amidst dense foliage, overlooked a clearing frequented by nannies from neighboring settlements, unbeknownst to Nick on that fateful day. Mr. Mayo had been returning from a local errand when he caught sight of suspicious activity. "I spotted someone, cloaked in black despite the morning heat, stationed as a lookout. I decided to observe and investigate," he recounted later to the police. With years of experience navigating the forest, Mr. Mayo adeptly maneuvered without disturbing the wildlife. "I concealed myself behind a tree, keeping vigilant watch. Suddenly, I witnessed a man assaulting a woman, knocking her to the ground. Initially, I feared for her safety, but it became clear he was targeting the child. Acting swiftly, I intervened, striking him with a makeshift cudgel I had prepared. Mr. Mayo elaborated. Exceptional work, Mr. Mayo. You've become a local hero. The press is eager to speak with you, remarked one of the officers. No, I prefer to stay out of the limelight. That's not my style. Mr. Mayo declined, quietly retreating to his abode via a circuitous route to evade pursuit. He considered his actions nothing out of the ordinary, believing anyone would have done the same in his position. How could I stand by when those in need of protection were in harm's way, he reflected. A few hours later, Kurt arrived at Mr. Mayo's house, gratitude pouring from his words. I'm the father of the boy you saved today. He's a resilient kid. Once I held him, he settled right down. Such bravery and intelligence in those eyes. We're deeply thankful you were there when it mattered. We can't express our gratitude enough, Kurt expressed, his voice laden with emotion after a tumultuous day. Is there any way I can repay you? Kurt inquired earnestly. Mr. Mayo waved off the notion with a humble smile. No need for thanks. When a child's safety is at stake, there's no hesitation, he replied, genuinely touched by Kurt's appreciation. Yet Kurt persisted, wanting to show his gratitude. If you insist, perhaps a new hunting suit and some provisions for my dog? Consider it done. But may I ask, was your intervention motivated by money? Mr. Mayo's curiosity prompted him to pose the question. Oh, sadly, it's much more complicated than that, Kurt replied, his voice tinged with regret. Mr. Mayo listened attentively, prompting Kurt to share further details of their tumultuous past. As Kurt recounted the series of events, from Jolie's illness to her unconventional parenting decision and subsequent passing, Mr. Mayo nodded in understanding. I live somewhat isolated here, so to speak, and rarely hear such tales, he remarked. Kurt elaborated on Nick's motivations, highlighting the investigators' insight that Nick's actions were driven not solely by greed, but by a deep-seated desire for revenge. He was consumed by it, Kurt explained. Relieved to share the complexities of the situation with an impartial listener, Kurt pondered aloud, questioning if their actions had driven Nick to the brink of madness and revenge. If it were just about himself, I wouldn't suffer such reflexivity, but everything he and Jolie did ultimately revolved around their son, Kurt reflected. Turning to Mr. Mayo for his perspective, Kurt asked, Do you think we played a role in pushing him to this point? Are we responsible for his desire for revenge? Are you serious? You're an adult, and you're talking such nonsense. Mr. Mayo's blunt truth hit Kurt hard, offering a fresh perspective on Nick's actions. That Nick of yours always found a reason. He doesn't even need one. He married for money, cheated shamelessly, mistreated his sick wife, and convinced himself it was all her fault. What's her fault? For retaliating once? For losing patience? For not enduring it? Mr. Mayo's words resonated deeply with Kurt, prompting him to reflect on the situation. Grateful for the insight, Kurt smiled in response. Now, I also owe you for your good advice, he acknowledged. The gamekeeper waved his hand dismissively. They parted as friends, with Mr. Mayo promising to look after Robert. I heard somewhere that the Chinese have this belief or wisdom, God knows what to call it, that if you save someone's life, you're responsible for that person forever. So don't worry about your Robert. I'll look after him here too, Mr. Mayo assured Kurt. True to his word, Mr. Mayo became a regular presence in Kurt's household, providing support and love to Robert. Meanwhile, Nick was sentenced to several years of imprisonment, bringing a sense of relief to Kurt's family. Life gradually returned to normal, with Mr. Chinlin continuing to fulfill his duties as Robert's guardian. Kurt found companionship in a single mother whose daughter attended the same kindergarten as Robert. Their children quickly became friends, sparking hope in Kurt's parents for his personal happiness. Despite moving forward, Kurt remained dedicated to honoring Jolie's memory. He regularly spoke to Robert about his mother, sharing photos and videos to ensure her presence was never forgotten. He reassured the boy that his mother's love would always surround him, even in her absence.
At my mother's funeral, my mother-in-law wore a grin as she declared, "This house will be inherited by my son." Contemplating which room to take, she remarked, "I wonder if I should choose this one." Politely, I corrected her, stating, "Actually, I'm the one inheriting this house." Unfazed, she retorted, "I know, but isn't it true that a wife's belongings belong to her husband? So, in essence, this house belongs to my son, right?" I sighed, questioning the validity of her claim. Cheerfully, she added, "From now on, let's get along." Hesitating, I asked. What do you mean by get along? She declared. Turning this room into my room. I inquired. Does that mean we'll be living together? Confidently, she replied. Exactly. With such a splendid house, it'd be a waste to have empty rooms when two people can live here, don't you think? Despite my recent loss, my mother-in-law seemed blissfully unaware of my grief. Why would she bring this up now? Can't she see the sadness on my face? It's no time for jokes. This house holds precious memories, built by my respected father and cherished by my late mother. I don't want my unreasonable mother-in-law to live here, and my husband, who doesn't stop at it, is equally at fault. To prevent my precious home from being tainted, I decided to take the initiative before moving out. I am a 42-year-old office worker, having missed the timing for marriage and still being single after turning 40. I had given up on the idea of getting married. However, through an acquaintance's introduction, I met Michael, who is 4 years younger than me, and we were able to get married. My husband is a kind person who prioritizes my opinions. Where should we go for our honeymoon? You mentioned that Europe would be nice, right? I asked. But didn't you say you preferred the Maldives? Let's go to the Maldives. My husband replied. My mom wants to live with us. My dad's health isn't great, and it seems my mom is finding it challenging to manage alone, he explained. I understand that your mom is going through a tough time, but didn't we agree not to live together before we got married? I questioned. You're right. I'll talk to my mom about it. My husband always listens to my whims, and I often feel guilty about it. Meeting a good person is a joy, but there's one regret. My father passed away 3 years before I got married, so I couldn't show him my wedding and reassure him. My father was a strict executive at a small and medium enterprise, and I deeply respected him. Despite the modest size of the company, his income was decent, and our family home was sizable enough to hold a funeral. As I began working as an office employee, I gained a deeper understanding of the challenges of work, which only increased my admiration for my father. And then 2 years after our marriage, my mother also passed away. Even my mom, my husband asked, Are you okay? Shouldn't you take a break in the back room? Funerals are generally less commonly held at home, but my mother's funeral was conducted at home. During my mother's funeral, he always looked out for me. Truly, I was fortunate to have met such a good husband. That's when my mother-in-law, Nancy, arrived. My deepest condolences. I sincerely sympathize with you, I replied. Thank you. I hadn't lived together with my mother-in-law, and our interactions had been limited, maintaining a reasonable distance. However, it was during my mother's funeral that I glimpsed her true nature. Following the funeral, my mother-in-law approached me. While it was not uncommon for her to seek me out, her expression carried an oddly gleeful tone. We greatly appreciate your assistance during this funeral. Thanks to you, we were able to smoothly complete the ceremony, she expressed appreciatively. Then, abruptly, she added, The funeral is over now. Isn't it enough with the formalities? I was taken aback, thinking she was initially trying to be considerate of my grief, but it soon became evident that wasn't the case. Commenting on the splendid house my parents had, I replied, Wait a moment. Undeterred, she boldly walked into the depths of the house. I protested, Oh, Mom, this is inconvenient. Some areas are messy. Dismissing my concerns, she declared, Don't fuss over details. More importantly, this house will be inherited by my son. I wonder if I should take this room. Hesitating, I tried to clarify. Mom, actually, I'm the one inheriting this house. Smirking, she responded, I know your parents didn't have any other children, right? And isn't a wife's belongings her husband's? So, in essence, this house belongs to my son, doesn't it? I sighed, questioning the validity of her claim. Cheerfully, she added, From now on, let's get along. My hesitation prompted her to confidently declare, I mean turning this room into my room. Concerned, I asked, Does that mean we'll be living together? Without hesitation, she replied, Exactly. I've decided with such a splendid house. It'd be a waste to have empty rooms when two people can live here. Finally, I won't have to take care of my husband all by myself. Unfortunately, my mother had recently passed away, and yet my mother-in-law was making such statements. I became increasingly angered, wondering why she would joke around at a time like this. Just as my conversation with my mother-in-law seemed to catch my husband's attention, he intervened. "Mom, what are you saying? This isn't the right time for such discussions," he scolded. Undeterred, my mother-in-law retorted, "Why make such a fuss?" Firmly, my husband insisted, "Just leave." He escorted her out of the house, apologizing, "Sorry, my mom can be unreasonable." Grateful for my dependable husband, I replied, "It's fine. Thanks to you for handling it." Yet, in the days that followed, I would come to realize that my husband's perspective on scolding my mother-in-law was subtly different from my own. 10 days after my mother's funeral, as things settled down a bit, we decided to discuss the fate of my family home. Unexpectedly, my husband made a proposal. "This apartment is cramped. Shouldn't we move back to my parents' house?" I suggested. Agreeing, he added, "Yeah, you're right. With more belongings and the possibility of having kids, it's better than squeezing into this tiny apartment." Then, hesitantly, he concluded, "Well then, we should start preparing for the move." I had a pressing matter to discuss about the move. "What's the matter?" I inquired. He hesitated before revealing. Considering the spacious house and all the empty rooms, I thought maybe my parents could move in with us. Stunned, I questioned, "Are you suggesting we live together?" Recently, I've noticed a change in my husband. Despite thinking he prioritized my opinions, I now wonder if he's merely a yes man or even a pushover. His compliance with my mother-in-law's requests and his suggestion of living together make me question his true stance. Despite my repeated objections to cohabitation, he persists, seemingly prioritizing her over me. Haven't I said it repeatedly? "We won't live together," I remind him. He responds, "But Mom keeps insisting on it." I counter, "During the funeral, you scolded her, didn't you? You stood up for me and opposed cohabitation." He admits, "Yes, I was upset about her barging into the house. But that doesn't mean I'm entirely against living together. I just thought such an important decision shouldn't be made casually in that setting." It was decisive. Despite nodding in agreement with my stance, he seems more inclined towards my mother-in-law. Moreover, he avoids making definitive decisions, maintaining a certain distance, perhaps unconsciously believing he remains neutral. People like him can be tricky, convincing themselves of their neutrality and decision-making abilities. It's frustrating. I oppose living with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested living in a particular room. I won't change my stance. "Please convey this to your mom," I insist. He responds, "Why? You seem really bothered by it." "Fine, I'll let her know." While I had mentally prepared for the possibility of living with my in-laws when we got married, witnessing my mother-in-law's behavior during my mother's funeral changed my perspective. Living together in the cherished home my father built is now unthinkable, especially considering my husband's lack of assertiveness. When he conveyed my opposition to cohabitation, my mother-in-law directly protested by calling me. "Why are you opposing cohabitation when there's such a spacious house? You're Michael's wife now, and his father and I are your parents, right? Why such strong opposition to living together with us?" I reiterated my decline for cohabitation, explaining my husband's mobility issues and the challenges I face alone. She accused me of abandoning them, prompting me to remind her of the reasons my husband had shared. Despite feeling sorry for my father-in-law's health, I can't ignore the possibility of everything related to him being pushed onto me if we were to live together. If we consider cohabitation a significant improvement in my husband and mother-in-law's mindset is a non-negotiable requirement. A few days after my mother-in-law labeled me heartless, my husband surprised me by rearranging the living room, moving furniture around to create space. Intrigued, I asked, "What are you doing? Is this for storing moving boxes?" He responded, "No. I'm planning to make space for 2 beds here." The mention of 2 beds filled me with dread, and cautiously, I asked, "Are your parents coming to stay?" To my dismay, he replied, "No, they're moving in today, even before the actual move." The realization hit me despite my objections. My husband and mother-in-law were forcing cohabitation upon me. Why is this happening? I questioned, feeling a growing sense of frustration. He explained their lease is up, so we decided they'd move here without renewing it. It'll be cramped for 4 people, but we're moving soon, right? Just bear with it for a little while. Distressed, I reiterated, that's not what I meant. Why is cohabitation even on the table? I've said it before. I don't want to live with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested living in this room. I'll make sure to talk to Mom. He responded, "We'll be living together from now on, so please get along." Annoyed, I questioned, "Why do you prioritize everything your mom says?" He clarified, "It's not about prioritizing her. I listened to both of your opinions and made a judgment." However, my husband, often a yes man when it came to my mother-in-law, seemed to have fallen for her cohabitation strategy. Unwittingly swayed by her, he believed he was making independent judgments. I used to see him as kind, but when paired with my mother-in-law, he became a handful, forcing me into cohabitation with my in-laws. As we welcomed my in-laws into our cramped apartment, my mother-in-law began complaining about the living conditions. Apologizing for the sudden addition of 2 elderly people, I assured them we would endure until the move. However, my father-in-law, Tony, seemed polite, and it appeared he wouldn't be problematic. But subtle signs indicated he was following my mother-in-law's lead, becoming another yes man. Days later, my mother-in-law requested an errand to buy a medicated patch. Frustrated, I wondered why she made decisions without involving me in the conversation. Minor as it was, it raised concerns about potential future impositions. Living together seemed unsustainable. With my in-laws preparing for their move to my parents' home, I decided to take preemptive action. As my mother-in-law expressed excitement about moving to the spacious house, I initiated behind-the-scenes preparations, determined to protect my parents' home. After about 10 uneventful days, I revealed my decision to renounce my inheritance. Handing over the official court approval, I explained, "That house holds immense sentimental value. I couldn't bear the thought of you living there, so I decided to let go of the house, preserving it as a beautiful memory in my heart." My mother-in-law scolded, "What madness possessed you? Even if you were letting it go, you could have sold it for money. Why abandon the house?" I calmly explained, "Even if I sold it, you'd just rely on that money. Next, I thought it'd be clearer if I simply had nothing." She retorted, "We moved out of our previous place for this move, you know. What are you doing? How will you make it up to us?" Firmly, I stood my ground. I've consistently opposed cohabitation, yet without proper discussion, you forced it upon me. So I took a firm stance. Both my husband and mother-in-law seemed stunned upon learning about my renunciation of inheritance. Their faces drained of color, and they were left speechless, their strength sapped. My father-in-law looked bewildered as he observed the 2 of them. However, I wasn't about to let up. "Michael," I continued, "I've been thinking about getting a divorce. What do you think?" My husband stammered, "Divorce?" My mother-in-law chimed in, "Michael, you should divorce this ridiculous wife immediately." I had expected her immediate demand for divorce, wanting to confirm whether my husband could make an independent decision at this critical moment. "Mom," my husband mumbled. His response was still pending, but my resolve to proceed with the divorce had solidified. "Fine, divorce is the only option," my mother-in-law snapped. My father-in-law interjected, "Michael, it can't be helped. Your mom insists." Sighing, my husband said, "Well, you seem to want a divorce too, and maybe that's for the best." Even in significant decisions, my husband and father-in-law remained yes men to my mother-in-law, and now my husband's words made it sound as if he changed his opinion for my sake. "Very well," I declared, "let's proceed with the divorce. I'll be moving out with minimal belongings. I spent the night at a budget hotel. Urgent matters awaited the next day, so I took half a day off work and headed back to the courthouse. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me, demanding answers. What's going on? It seems that house is becoming yours. Why the sudden outburst? Did you find out through the estate division process? Yes, that house belongs to me. You forged documents and deceived us. I calmly refuted. Why would I forge documents meant for court submission? Those are genuine. Then why is the house becoming yours when you were supposed to renounce the inheritance? I explained. Well, right after that, I promptly withdrew the application. Renouncing an inheritance is difficult once accepted. However, it takes about a month for the renunciation application to be accepted, during which time it can be withdrawn at any point. The documents I showed my in-laws were not acceptance-related. They were from the application stage. I intentionally made them believe I had relinquished the house and confronted them with the prospect of divorce to gauge their reactions and decide my next steps. I didn't expect my mother-in-law's mindset to change, but I hoped my husband would reconsider and express that he didn't want a divorce. If he said he didn't want a divorce, I planned to rethink it and later explain about the house. However, so the house really becomes yours then, since it was acquired before the divorce. It's subject to property division, right? In such cases, you two are supposed to split the money from selling it, don't you? My mother-in-law seemed determined to extract whatever she could, recognizing the house wouldn't be hers. However, I had foreseen this. If that house were jointly acquired, it would indeed be considered shared property. However, it's a unique asset acquired through inheritance, exempt from property division. Unfortunately, specific assets like this aren't eligible for division. She persisted. What about the money that would come to Michael through property division? I calmly responded. We've only been married for a few years, so there's hardly anything substantial. Maybe just the car, although there's still an outstanding loan on it. Accusing me of selfishness, she called me heartless and declared, I'm protecting that house because it holds precious memories of my parents. I don't want people like you living there. If you have any further complaints, please go through a lawyer. After the call with my mother-in-law, the divorce proceedings progressed smoothly. Presumably, she urged my husband to expedite the divorce. Regardless, the divorce was finalized, and I was free from the burden of dealing with my in-laws. I felt a sense of relief, as if I had successfully shielded my father's home from harm. After I moved out, my former in-laws spent some time in the apartment where my ex-husband and I used to live. Despite one less person, the small space likely felt cramped. My former mother-in-law explored new housing options, but their age posed challenges in passing rental application screenings. Consequently, my ex-husband opted to rent a smaller single-family home for them. Although it's smaller, being a house, the rent is likely higher than the apartment. He also assumed the responsibility of supporting his parents. My ex-husband faces a challenging life ahead. Initially excited about moving into the large house my father left behind, my former mother-in-law now settles for a considerably smaller home, likely leaving her disappointed. As for me, I've embarked on a new chapter in the house my parents left me. It radiates warmth, as if my parents are still present. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time.
It's like a dream come true. We got a huge $300 million inheritance in our very own company. When the workers saw my sister-in-law, Mary, celebrating our dad's inheritance, they started whispering to each other. They were super happy, and Mary proudly said, Shay, keep it down. This is the moment when my husband gets to take over the company and get $3 million. After hearing that, one of the workers burst out laughing. My older brother, sitting next to his confused wife, was reading a will from the lawyer. His face went pale as he read it. Look at this, my brother said, showing her the will. She screamed. I'm Lucy, 29 years old, and I work for my dad's business. When he was young, my dad had the smart idea to start a business from scratch. Over time, it grew into a decent-sized company with lots of workers. But right after starting the business, he got into debt. Even as a little kid, I could see how tough it was for my dad. Even when the company got bigger, I still wanted to help my mom with her clerical work in the office. My parents told me I could go to college and choose any career I wanted, but I really wanted to work for my dad's company. That's all I could think about when I finished high school. When I joined my dad's company, Bob, who had been working there for a long time, was the first person to teach me about business. He didn't treat me differently just because I was the boss's daughter. Thanks to Bob, I got to learn a lot about how the company works. My brother Tom, who's only 2 years older than me, went to college to learn about management. He was always proud to tell people that our dad ran a business and that he would take over one day. Tom's friends would ask him, "What are your plans after college, Tom? Are you going to find a job?" Tom would say, "I don't need to find a job because I'll be working for my dad's company. I'll become the president eventually, so I'm taking my time to learn about management until then." Wow, you're going to be the next president. That sounds like a really stable future. I'm kinda jealous, one of Tom's friends said. Tom, you have a younger sister too, right? Won't there be a competition over who gets to take over the company? Another friend asked. Yeah, I have a younger sister, but she's just finished high school and she's pretty down to earth, Tom replied. You always say that, but I've heard she's actually doing some important work behind the scenes at the company. If I become president, I'll make sure to keep her on board as long as she listens to me, Tom assured. My brother was spending a lot of money and having fun, pretending it was all part of learning to be a business manager. He knew that if he acted well, he'd have lots of friends around him, and being the next president of the company made him popular with women who wanted to date him. He ended up marrying Mary, who was very flashy and attractive. They had a fancy wedding, went on a luxurious honeymoon overseas, built a big mansion, and started their life together. He said he did all this to look good as the future president of the company. Mary seemed happy with Tom. He listened to her and let her enjoy all the fancy things in life. I doubt she'd want a life like mine, where I work with my mom behind the scenes in my dad's company, I told someone. Lucy, you don't seem like the CEO's daughter. You don't act like you're the president's daughter, she said. Mary would often laugh at me when we saw each other at family events. I prefer a simpler life, I said. She looked at me like she felt sorry for me. I pity you for being the president's daughter but not knowing how to spend money. You still live with your parents and have plenty of money, so you don't need to work hard. And with your title, shouldn't men be drawn to you? My brother chimed in, yeah, she's right. Lucy's always been so humble, people wouldn't even guess her dad's the president. She treats everyone like equals. It's surprising. I still have a lot to learn in my job. Many of my colleagues are better than me, so I can't act like I'm the boss, I argued. But my brother looked shocked. That's why you're not useful. A boss needs to stand out so they're respected by their team. Let others handle the simple tasks. It seems like only Dad and I are the bosses around here. You shouldn't belittle your team, no matter how powerful you are. Before I could reply, my brother interrupted me, looking annoyed. A woman who's too logical isn't attractive to men. Then Mary joined in. If you keep talking like that, you'll never find a husband. You should try to be more appealing, don't you think, Tom? Yeah, well, when I become president, I might just fire a humble employee like you, Tom said. After that, my brother and Mary said their piece and left quickly. My mom, who had stayed quiet during all of this, comforted me after they left. She said, "You're doing great work for the company, which really helps me and your dad. Don't let what Tom says bother you." My dad nodded, looking serious. They had already told my brother to his face that they didn't like his ideas. But after that, my brother and Mary got upset and didn't come to our house for over a month. I remembered how gloomy it was during that time, so I told my parents, Tom and Mary can say whatever they want. After that, Tom and Mary kept living their lives however they wanted, going to fancy restaurants and luxury resorts. It was all to make it seem like Tom would be the president of my dad's company one day. My dad was working really hard to grow his business, but one night at home, he started complaining of chest pain. Dad, are you okay? Just try to stay calm. I'll call for an ambulance, I said. Lucy, grab this. As we waited for the ambulance, my dad motioned to a drawer and told me he had a letter for me. I hurriedly grabbed the letter from the drawer. I want you to read this if anything happens to me. Everything else is up to the lawyers, he said breathlessly before losing consciousness before the ambulance arrived. Despite being rushed to the emergency room, he died without regaining consciousness. My brother and Mary were away on a trip when my father passed away, so they couldn't be there for him. They returned from their trip 2 days later. At the end of my father's funeral, Tom said, "We're just glad we arrived on time. I never imagined my father would pass away while we were on vacation." I was shocked. My brother and Mary showed up at the funeral without any worries, not acknowledging that my mother and I had been left to handle everything. I talked to my brother about it in private, so the other employees wouldn't hear. "Couldn't you have come back home sooner?" I asked my brother in private. "What? I couldn't. Our return flight was already booked," my brother replied without offering an apology, then turned to address the employees. "Thank you all for your support. From now on, I'll be stepping into my father's shoes with dignity," he said. Mary glanced around at the employees, who had gone silent at my brother's words, and praised him, saying, "That's exactly what Tom would do." "Everyone's impressed, right? It's only natural, considering my husband's dignity." With pride, my brother said to me, "Lucy, isn't the ceremony about to begin? Please lead the way." I was annoyed by my brother's tardiness and his arrogance, but I led him and the employees to the meal ceremony table. My brother continued to act arrogantly as we ate. "Lucy, isn't the quality of this food questionable? It might lower our father's reputation as president," he remarked. "Mom and I already discussed it and agreed on the menu. Plus, I don't need you telling me what to do. This is why people don't understand what it means to be president," I snapped back. He not only bossed me around but also gave orders to the other employees serving the guests. "You're useless," he declared. I hurried to intervene when I heard my brother ordering Bob, a longtime employee, around. "Tom, that's not right. Don't talk down to Bob or any of our employees. They deserve respect. Why should I act humble in front of someone who's just an employee? They should show me more respect as the president," he argued. Mary joined in, backing him up. "That's correct. Lucy, stop disrespecting Tom, the president of the company. If you keep disobeying him, he can fire you. He's in charge," she warned. Just as my brother and his wife were getting worked up, a man showed up. "Sorry to interrupt. Your father asked me to handle his inheritance," he revealed. He was the lawyer my father had hired while he was still alive. Then it hit me. My father had mentioned before he passed away that he had already hired a lawyer. It seemed he had been preparing for his death and had spoken with a lawyer a few years back. My brother and Mary's faces lit up when the lawyer mentioned inheritance. They eagerly welcomed him into their room. Tom said, "Thank you for coming. Let's get this done as soon as possible." But as he spoke with the lawyer, Tom started to cry. Wasn't my father's inheritance supposed to be $300 million? Mary, upon hearing this, couldn't contain her excitement. $300 million. That much money for our company is like a dream come true. The employees started whispering when they heard this. Mary proudly announced to the grieving employees, "Quiet down. This is the moment when the company and its $300 million inheritance passed to Tom." Upon hearing this, one of the employees burst into uncontrollable laughter. My brother had the will and was reading it next to Mary, who was puzzled by the employee's reaction. My brother's face went pale as he read. Mary, according to the will, the entire company will be inherited by the eldest daughter, Lucy," he stammered. He stared at the will for a moment, then erupted. "This can't be. It's wrong." The lawyer, sounding troubled, confirmed, "This is a legally binding will." My brother's voice grew more strained. "What? I can't believe this. How can Lucy become president instead of me?" "Maybe Dad was just getting old and forgetful," Mary chimed in. "Yeah, your father wasn't thinking straight. A will made by someone losing their mind is worthless." Hearing this, I lost it. I couldn't stand by while they insulted my late father. I couldn't let anyone, even family, disrespect my father, who was a good man till the end. "Stop. The idea of my brother Tom becoming president is even more absurd, in my opinion," I asserted. My brother was furious. "What are you trying to say? That I'm not fit to be president?" he snapped back. Without hesitation, I fired back, "You're absolutely right. How can you lead this company if you've never contributed to it?" "Don't be ridiculous. Mary and I even built a mansion fit for a president, and we made sure to project the image," he defended. "Building a mansion unsuited for a leader and dining extravagantly? That's not good for business. And didn't Dad cover most of the costs for that house and extravagance?" How would you even know? I countered. Just before he passed, Dad left me a letter. In it, he outlined all the money he had spent on you and said he would give you a gift during his lifetime. So your share of the estate is practically nothing, I disclosed. Mary panicked. Hold on. Is the inheritance really worth $300 million? Have we already spent that much? It's not fair that we're left with so little. The employee who had been laughing earlier quickly approached Mary and explained that $300 million is from the company's assets, not personal wealth. I'm sure all the employees here understand that. Company funds aren't meant for inheritance, I clarified to Mary. Exactly. The company's money isn't meant to be divided among family members, so I doubt my brother's share is significant, I added. That's heartbreaking, Mary sighed. Oh no, Lucy. Mary was shocked. The inheritance? $300 million? My brother suddenly stood up as if he'd had a revelation and shouted at the employees, Do you really want a plain woman like Lucy as your company president? You must see that I'm more qualified. I have the same charm as my father. None of his colleagues sided with him. Bob took the lead and spoke to my brother. Your father, the one you're succeeding, was a charismatic founder of this company, but you and he are different. What you have is arrogance, not charisma. My brother flew into a rage when Bob calmly countered him. Tom, you may hold a position in our company, but us, the employees, hardly ever see you around. I don't have time for actual work in the company. I'm too busy networking with others. There's no time for menial tasks, my brother argued. Networking? Going on trips and partying all night? Is that what you call networking? That's hardly enough. Bob continued. Meanwhile, Lucy's been putting in hard work every day, learning about the company while quietly handling her behind-the-scenes duties. I see the same dedication in her as I did in your father. Lucy is the right person for the job as far as all of us here at the company are concerned, Bob concluded. The other employees nodded in agreement. I was touched and responded, Thank you all so much. Honestly, I'm taken aback by this news, but having seen my father's passion for the company firsthand, I share the same dedication. I'm grateful for your continued support. The employees warmly applauded as I bowed deeply. Emboldened by their applause, I spoke firmly. Each one of you here is a valuable friend who has contributed to our business. Anyone who overlooks that isn't fit to be part of this company, let alone its president. Even the president can be fired by the employees. My brother grew annoyed upon hearing this. What are you talking about? I'm your brother. What are you even talking about? You were the one who said you'd fire me if you became president, brother. I reminded him. I can't keep paying a salary to an incompetent employee just because he's family. This is ridiculous. Can someone please help me out here? My brother pleaded for support from those around him, but all he got were cold stares from the employees. Seeing that nobody was backing him up, my brother and Mary left in a hurry. After that, Tom lost his job and relied on the small inheritance he received, but it didn't last long. Can you lend me some money, Lucy? He asked, kneeling before me. I was disgusted by my brother's behavior. Even after losing his job, he didn't try to find a new one and was still expecting help from the family. I firmly told my mother not to give him any money. His friends, who had once been supportive, turned their backs on him when they found out he lost his presidency to me, his sister. When Mary married my brother, she had envisioned being the wife of the company president, but none of her friends showed any sympathy for her. As their financial situation became dire, my brother and his wife decided to sell their mansion. The proceeds from the sale could have sustained their lifestyle, but without any income, their savings quickly dwindled. When they had nothing left to sell, they struggled to cover their expenses. Eventually, they realized they needed to find work. However, no one was willing to hire them because they lacked any work experience. Eventually, Tom found a part-time job at a convenience store. Now, he's in an unfamiliar role, facing criticism from younger coworkers. Mary's situation changed too. She's no longer a full-time housewife, but now works as a cashier at a supermarket, alongside the very part-time housewives she once looked down upon. Her salary is low. Meanwhile, I'm using my experience from behind-the-scenes work to help the company grow. With support from Bob and other employees, the company is thriving. Ironically, my brother's situation has strengthened employee unity. I've pledged to keep working with my mother to expand the business, aiming to bring pride to my Father in heaven. Why is the money we sent to Mom only $670? My husband shouts angrily. I had to stop sending more money. Look at what's left in your mom's account on this paper, I reply straightforwardly. My name is Penelope and I'm 42 years old. I work part-time at a supermarket. I have 2 sons, Ethan in 8th grade and Leo in 6th grade. My husband is Asher, who's 43 years old. Asher's mom, my mother-in-law, is 67 years old. Ever since Asher's dad passed away, my mother-in-law has been living alone. Even though she gets some money from a pension, it's not much. When my father-in-law died, we talked about it. He raised Asher, and I feel indebted to him. I figure he'll need more help in the future too. So I've decided to send her $335 every month as a sort of caregiving payment, I explain. They told us the house loan is paid off now. My late father-in-law left behind $200,000. As per his will, Asher, being his only child, agreed to give the entire amount to my mother-in-law. I thought maybe we could manage with that money. It's scary living without any income and seeing your savings shrink. My mother-in-law understands this too, so she suggested I give her a monthly allowance. It's more of a symbolic gesture, I add. But less than a year after we made that decision, my mother-in-law called in tears, sparking an argument about the allowance because of COVID. I can't afford to go to the cheaper supermarket, so I can't save any money, she says. COVID can be scary for some people, my husband acknowledges. Yeah, it's scary to go out. I agree. So if there's something you need, just tell me. I can pick it up from the specific store on my way home from work, I offer. But my mother-in-law insists that's not the problem. It's not just groceries, it's everyday items too. Oh, I understand now. It's not only food. Okay, I'll go to that store for everyday items as well. I promise. Honestly, do I have to spell it out for you? It's not just groceries and everyday items. It's things like hair dye to cover gray hair too, she shouts. In other words, she's saying, please don't make me explain so much. The allowance isn't enough. My husband, feeling guilty, says, I'm sorry, mother, and decides to increase it to $670 without asking me first. Wow, $670 is a lot of money. I couldn't hide my surprise at the decision made without asking me first. That's like all the money I earn from my part-time job. And soon, our older child will be taking entrance exams, and we can't skip sending them to cram school. I asked the store manager for more hours, but it's been hard to balance work and home. Mom, you're never home at night, my younger child complained. I'm sorry, sweetie. Mommy is working hard to earn money for us, I said, feeling guilty. Today, I made a really cool piggy bank at school and got praise for it. But I can't even talk about it now, he banged on the table. I'm sorry. I'll buy you the toy you wanted for your birthday. I promise I'll work hard for it, I reassured him, promising to buy the toy my second son wanted. Then my husband walked by, just wait a bit for the toy. Grandma is making sacrifices too. Mommy isn't working just for toys, she's working for Grandma, he said before leaving me feeling guilty. Even for our child's birthday gift, we were cutting back for my mother-in-law's sake. And the way he said it made me wonder, who was I really working for? My husband's words left me confused. Surprisingly, our younger child stayed and patted my shoulder. Mom, you're doing your best. Don't worry, Mom. I don't need the toy right away, my younger child reassures me. But that feeling of uncertainty returned when my mother-in-law called. Did you get the envelope? She asked, her voice trembling. Yes, I replied. You can probably guess what happened next. Indeed, today I received an envelope from my mother-in-law. When I opened it, I found a copy of a bank statement inside. I quickly checked the remaining balance. Huh. I was surprised, and my voice slipped out unintentionally. $6. It's less than $10 now. Can you see it? My mother-in-law seemed to understand that I had seen the contents of the envelope, and her voice quivered with tears. And now, with prices going up, I can't even afford to pay the electricity and gas bills, she sobbed. But I tried to keep talking while looking at the statement. That's enough. All you do is tell me what to do and what not to do, going on about useless things and procrastinating. Last time, you talked about running errands for household items and groceries, but those were useless solutions. That's why I called it this hour. Asher, are you there? Take over for me. My husband had already come close during the phone conversation, and he said, Mom, let me take over, as he took the receiver from me. Yeah, Asher responded. Then he exclaimed, Oh no, letting her use up the entire inheritance, letting the balance drop below $10. I'm sorry, I think this is definitely a misfortune for my humble parents. Yeah, I understand. So starting from next month, if I send $2,000 each month, will that be okay? He blurted out suddenly. What? $2,000? How could the allowance be that much? I stood there in shock as I listened. After he hung up the phone, Asher shouted angrily. Why is the allowance for Mom only $670? I told you it should be at least $670. I thought you had increased it. But you see, inside that envelope, I tried to explain, but he interrupted me and continued. I told you I owe her for raising me. In the future, she'll probably need more help. If you think of it as caregiving expenses, why is my mother in such a heartbreaking situation? His voice grew louder as he expressed his frustration. I was already stretched to my limit. Even the $335 allowance was tough to manage. I thought increasing it to $670 was an achievement. I worked more hours at my part-time job to cope. I even learned to cook more affordable meals. I managed the household expenses with all those efforts, but it wasn't enough, and there were sacrifices. I did it for my children just like I do everything else. She scolded me abruptly, deciding on a $2,000 allowance without consulting me and without even considering how our allowances were being used according to my mother-in-law's bank statement. Above all, I'm working for the sake of my sons, not for my mother-in-law. That's enough, I said in a cold voice. I realize that when a person gets too angry, their voice becomes quiet. What do you mean, it's fine? Are you getting defensive now? My husband mocked me. I was no longer willing to yield to his words. After seeing a copy of that statement, I absolutely couldn't accept such a ridiculous proposal as a $2,000 allowance. I've had enough of a son who blindly believes and supports a money-seeking mother and grandmother. People who can't prioritize our family don't belong here. Get out. If you want to support your mother so badly, then go live with her. You can happily go to hell together. I firmly pushed my husband out the front door, then I walked him out. I shoved the envelope in his face. I'll send your belongings back and you'll cover the shipping. Take a close look at the contents of your mother's bank statement, huh? My husband asked, but I just closed the door with a laugh. Bang. What's going on, Mom? Hearing the commotion, our two children came downstairs. Well, you two. Your father said he wants to spend more money on you, and he asked Grandma to spend more too. I couldn't stand it any longer, so I explained to the children. I see. If you decided this, Mom, it must be for the best for this house, my older child said. I'll follow your lead, they added. Well, that toy. I'll wait for it until I'm an adult, no matter how many years it takes, my younger son said, trying to cheer me up. Thank you, my sons. 1 week later, my husband called out to me, help me. I responded coldly, what about? Could you at least listen to my story? He pleaded. I know what you meant when you said to look at the statement. I can't believe after all this time that I know what that means, he stammered, but he kept talking, clinging to his speech. I had to hold back my laughter on the phone. I can't believe that you would blindly trust your mother and then suggest such an outrageous proposal. I can't believe you're calling me now, wanting to get back together. You really have no idea how clueless you are, huh? That's just who you are. You question everything without realizing your own indecisiveness. You casually involve others and act surprised when it's pointed out, I said. Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to have one final conversation. I want to say those last words in person. It's important for the children and closure matters. I agreed to meet my husband in our house. Oh, and make sure to bring all of your mother's credit card statements, okay? I instructed. My husband and mother-in-law arrived, their lives undoubtedly in disarray. I thought this meeting would be a complete disaster. If you had just calmed down and looked at the statement, you would have figured it out. My husband insulted me outright. You ended up believing your mother, didn't you? I responded calmly. So, can you show me the statement? My husband placed the statement on the table with trembling hands, and as I looked at it, I asked, what did you discover? And then my mom, she used the money I sent her for electricity, gas, food. It wasn't just for living expenses, he confessed in a barely audible voice. It wasn't just for living expenses, was it? Actually, the other purpose was the main one, right? Please say it with your own mouth, I urged. She was a member of an escort club. I'll let my husband tell you himself. his withered confession accompanied by my mother-in-law's trembling lips. I was absolutely delighted, and I couldn't help but laugh. That's right. Your mother, whom you believe more than me, was a woman who spent money on male escorts while lying about not being able to pay the increased electricity and gas bills and came begging to her own son. I exclaimed with glee. The statement showed transactions at an escort club named Romeo, followed by expenses at high-end restaurants and bars. She was spending over $40,000 a month. After a good laugh, I took a sip of cold water to calm down, then continued speaking. Even at nearly 70 years old, how could she pick up a young, handsome guy at an escort club and take him to all those fancy places? I don't understand how she ended up in such a situation, begging for money at her own son's house. I'm really curious if she ended up addicted or something like that, I remarked, poking at her wounded pride. Unexpectedly, my mother-in-law spoke up, saying, "He told me he feels love for the princess who gives him an allowance. He even gives me presents." This made me spit out the water I had been drinking in surprise. I couldn't help but giggle and laugh. Referring to a 67-year-old as a princess is quite something, isn't it? Well, some people fall for words easily, like my mother-in-law becoming like a man's personal ATM. So they'll keep saying those words, won't they? I took another sip of water. If you're giving an escort guy an allowance, you must be withdrawing a considerable amount, right? It wasn't my mother-in-law who visibly shuddered, huh? The one who reacted was actually my husband. I placed a piece of paper on the table. It was fun meeting you today. I love you. Please request me again. Read the business card with a handwritten message. Huh? My husband stared at the business card on the table. I didn't expect to be kicked out of the house all of a sudden. I didn't even tidy up my own room, did I? He stammered. I found your stuff while I was cleaning up your things, even the strange money deductions. It all makes sense now. Yes, that's right. So it's not just my fault, my mother-in-law shouted hoarsely. There was a glass of lemonade in front of her, but she hadn't touched it at all. It might be expected, since she had been continuously blamed. However, as the target of blame shifted, she attempted an unexpected turnaround. My husband's voice trembled as he reacted to this blow. But because I've been laughed at this much, am I the only one being ridiculous? Isn't that so unfair? My husband retorted. Huh? No, just wait a minute. You're making me spend this much money, and now you're saying this. That's my line. Asking for money because your allowance isn't enough. I can't believe you're into escort girls too. Like parent, like child, must be an annoying way to spend money. It's over now, isn't it? Both of you are done. At my words, both my husband and mother-in-law had no words left. Hey kids, come down here for a sec. I called up to the second floor. The two kids came down. I need to talk to you about something serious. Mom and I have decided it's best if we split up because Dad and Grandma have been using a lot of money selfishly. I explained honestly. Dad has been giving money to another woman, and Grandma has been spending a lot on a younger man. They're asking for even more. My husband tried to stop me from saying it in front of the kids, but I felt they needed to know the truth. The older child spoke up, agreeing that Dad shouldn't hide things. They pointed out how Dad said there wasn't enough money for toys while spending it on other people. The younger one added that their older sibling probably needed money for tutoring. That's right. I want to save money for your future, not spend it on strangers, I said firmly. Hearing this, the older child said, then it's goodbye from us too. The younger one agreed, saying they could manage without toys. They both thought it was wrong for Dad to spend money on someone else instead of us. In the end, it was clear that I had to cut ties with both my husband and my mother-in-law. Because of my divorce from my husband and mother-in-law's extravagant spending, I received a significant amount of alimony. Sadly, they continued their reckless habits, and I could see the consequences coming. Eventually, they hit rock bottom, accumulating debts so severe that they had to give up their house. Despite having to pay alimony and child support, they seemed unable to manage their finances wisely. I refused to give them any leeway. They need to fulfill their obligations entirely. I've taken up part-time work to support us. Although we can't afford many luxuries, the three of us are making ends meet decently. It's not extravagant, but I'm determined to do everything I can for my children. My hope is to continue living peacefully with the three of us in the future.
I've already invested $60,000 simply to ensure your happiness. Yet, how could you reduce me to merely a wallet or an ATM? We don't recall ever soliciting your assistance. Lily, Max's wife, scoffed with disdain. Why don't you attempt to cease the payments if they trouble you so much? After all, I am quite capable of handling it myself, Max added in a dismissive tone, echoing his wife's sentiments. Even Max, my eldest son whom I've raised, behaves in such a manner. After coercing me into covering the costs of a $20,000 engagement party and then a $40,000 wedding, they have the audacity to treat me like this. They only perceive me as a source of funds, lamented Chloe, Max's mother, feeling disheartened by the lack of gratitude. I must have made a mistake in raising my son. I'll never allow them to manipulate me again, Chloe declared, firm in her resolve. I've heard you loud and clear, Max retorted. Are you sure about that? You know we won't let you see your grandchild, right? He threatened. You don't have to. I'd be more than happy to discontinue the payments, Chloe responded calmly. From that point on, Max and Lily faced a steep decline in their fortunes, having treated Chloe like a bottomless source of money. My name is Chloe. I'm 56 years old. I've been struggling alone ever since my husband passed away 12 years ago. Between my job and raising my 2 children, I've always had my hands full, Chloe reflected on her life. I'm currently an executive at a decent company that I've been with since before I got married. To the outside world, I guess you could call me a career woman, she continued. The children who were high schoolers when my husband died have now graduated college and are working, so I'm a bit relieved. I just wish they'd settle down and start their own family soon, Chloe sighed, contemplating her future. Living comfortably in the condominium that she used to share with her children, Chloe's life took an unexpected turn when Max called her one day. I want to introduce you to a woman I'm thinking of marrying, Max said excitedly. Delighted, Chloe agreed, and when Max brought Lily, his fiancée, to meet her, Chloe couldn't help but be proud. Nice to meet you. I look forward to getting to know you, Chloe greeted Lily warmly. The woman Max introduced as Lily was a receptionist at his company, strikingly beautiful, and Chloe couldn't help but feel pleased that her son had found someone like her. Congratulations to you both. I'm here to support your happiness, Chloe said, beaming with joy. Their conversation flowed, and eventually, the topic of the engagement party arose. We're planning to have an engagement party soon, Max informed Chloe. I need to start preparations. Then, Mom, could you cover the $20,000 cost for the engagement party? Max sprung the request on Chloe, his mother. Taken aback by the hefty sum, Chloe hesitated momentarily. I thought the average cost was around $10,000. However, seeing their happy faces, I couldn't refuse and agreed. Of course, it's a happy occasion, she conceded. Later, Chloe's eldest daughter, Mia, paid her a visit. How's work going? The deadline was yesterday, Chloe inquired, concerned for Mia's well-being. I'm managing well, so don't worry, Maya reassured her mother. A manga artist, Mia hadn't yet struck gold with a major hit but managed to make a living through her series. With her talent in drawing and her love for manga, it seemed like the perfect fit for her. By the way, Mom, Max is getting married, isn't he? Mia inquired. Yes, he came by the other day with his fiancée, Lily, to introduce her. They've asked for $20,000 for the engagement party, Chloe informed Mia. Wow, $20,000 is a hefty sum for sure, Maya remarked. It's not like that. Apparently, they're going to split it for their wedding funds and to send gifts of gratitude. Is that how it works? Chloe wondered aloud. On the day of the engagement party, Chloe handed over the promised $20,000. Both Lily and her parents looked delighted. We'll use this to start our new life together, they exclaimed, stashing away the money. There were no gifts of gratitude that Chloe expected, but she reminded herself that this was typical of engagement parties. As long as they could have a happy marriage, she reasoned, it was okay. However, a few days later, Max dropped a bombshell. I want a grand wedding with lots of company and connections invited, maybe around 250 people, he announced. That sounds wonderful. And with that, Mom, I'd like to ask you to cover the upfront cost of the wedding, Max requested. What? I was under the impression that weddings were funded by the couple themselves, Chloe protested. I'm counting on you, Mom. It's pretty standard for parents to pay for the wedding. But didn't I give a lot of money for the engagement party? Lily's parents are frail and can't contribute, and I'll give you back the wedding gift, Max pressed on, leaving Chloe feeling reluctant to agree. I opened the bill Max had brought, and to my shock, the amount totaled $40,000. The idea of such an upfront cost made my head spin. How grand of a wedding were they planning? Wait a minute, isn't this a bit too much? Why not have a wedding within your means? I questioned, feeling overwhelmed. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event, and Lily doesn't want to compromise. Plus, don't you want Lily's parents to see how happy she is? Max countered, cornering me. Being pressured like that, I couldn't refuse. All right, it's indeed a joyous once-in-a-lifetime occasion, I conceded reluctantly. Seeing my consent, Max smiled and thanked me before leaving the room. Later, I transferred the upfront cost of $40,000 to the wedding venue. It was difficult to part with the money I had been saving for my retirement, but I told myself it was for my child's happiness. 2 months later, on the wedding day, the venue was more luxurious than I had anticipated. Mia and I arrived early in the morning to change into our dresses and get our hair done. As I approached the bride and groom's dressing room to knock, I'd overheard their conversation. I can't believe we're able to have such a lavish wedding, thanks to Mom, Max exclaimed. Absolutely, and she gave us $20,000 for the engagement party. I even managed to buy a new bag. What a great wallet, more like an ATM. Let's keep withdrawing from it, Max, Lily chimed in. That's mean, Maya whispered, stunned by their conversation. Lily continued gleefully, if we ask her, she'll probably cover the rest of the wedding costs, right? Of course you will. Leave it to me. Then let's use the wedding gift for a honeymoon trip to Hawaii. And of course, we'll take my parents along. How about buying a high-rise apartment for our new home? That sounds perfect. Let's get my mother to cover the cost. She does have the money, after all, Max proposed eagerly. My hand, raised to knock on the door, trembled. Mia gently held my shoulder and led me away from the door, breathing slowly. I grasped Mia's hand, which rested gently on my shoulder, and whispered, Mia, there's something I need you to look into when the ceremony starts. Of course, Mom. Leave it to me, Maya assured me. And so Max and Lily's wedding commenced. From their vows in the chapel to the toasts at the start of the reception, my mind was consumed with the conversation between Max and Lily earlier. Even as the MC introduced me and the spotlight fell on me, all I could manage was a bow. Mia, who had been circulating and offering toasts, returned to me. Mom, I checked with Lily's relatives. Both of her parents are perfectly healthy. That's horrible. We need to confront them. I'll be right there with you, I declared. Just as Mia spoke, it was time for the first wardrobe change. Lily exited first, followed by Max. As Max emerged, the MC announced, now the groom will exit escorted by his mother, Chloe, who raised him single-handedly. Summoned, I walked down the aisle to meet Max. A little tipsy, Max was in high spirits, announcing into the MC's microphone, This is my amazing mom. Keeping a straight face, I walked beside Max, exited the hall, and headed straight to the dressing room where Maya was waiting. She approached Max and began, Max, there's something I need to ask you. What is it, sis? Make it quick. I need to change and get back, Max replied curtly as he undressed. I've heard the conversation in the dressing room earlier. How could you talk about Mom like that? Mia confronted him. Huh, you were listening? Well, whatever. Max dismissed her with a shrug. Taken aback by Max's attitude, Lily, who had already changed into her dress, entered the room. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law, what's going on? She demanded. Mia found out that your parents are healthy. They both have good jobs. Why are you making our mom pay for everything? What's going on? I added, unable to contain my frustration. What is this, some kind of sister-in-law bullying? Scary, Lily mocked, dramatically recoiling. My patience snapped at her mocking attitude. I've already paid $60,000 hoping for your happiness, and yet you treat people like their wallets, ATMs. What kind of language is that? I confronted Lily, exasperated by her dismissive attitude. Hearing this, Lily laughed as if it were a joke. Acting all high and mighty for such a small sum. We're not in your debt. Besides, it's normal for the groom's parents to pay for the wedding, right? But you lied about your parents being ill to buy a new bag. Who, you were eavesdropping. That's a terrible hobby, Lily retorted, mocking Mia. Mia, angered by Lily's words, snapped back. Watch your mouth. I don't want to be told off by someone doing some weird job as a manga artist. It's because you're such a nerd that you can't get married. That's right, you're hopeless when it comes to marriage, sis. Max chimed in, joining Lily in the mockery. Stunned speechless by their cruelty, I tried to scold them, but Max just laughed and responded, if you're going to talk like that, try stopping the payments. After all, I'm an elite. I can easily handle it. Well, it'll be a shame to lose the cash cow. I had paid $20,000 for the engagement party and $40,000 for the wedding, and this was how they repaid me. No gratitude, only cruelty. Feeling like I had failed somewhere in raising my son, I made a firm decision. I've had enough. I won't be manipulated by them anymore. I've heard all you have to say. Are you sure about that? If you don't listen to us, you won't see your grandchild, Max threatened. That's fine. You don't need to bring them over. I'll gladly stop the payments. I replied firmly, refusing to yield to their threats. Max and Lily stared at me, stunned, as I continued, I'm severing hard ties here. I wish you all the best. Taking Maya's hand, we left the venue, the joyous noise of the reception still audible as we departed. A month later, as Mia and I were enjoying some tea at home, the intercom rang with a shrill tone. Oh, Mom, it's Max. What should we do? Mia asked, uncertainty evident in her voice. It had been a month since I last saw Max. When he showed up unexpectedly, he looked remarkably worn and tired. Mom, you must have received the bill for the wedding venue by now. Why haven't you paid? Max questioned urgently. Huh? Oh, the bill for the remaining balance. It was $45,000, right? It arrived, but I have no obligation to pay it, I replied, taken aback by his insistence. Don't be like that. In the end, we didn't receive many wedding gifts and couldn't pay the bill, so now we're in debt, Max explained, pleading for understanding. At that, Maya laughed and chimed in. From what I overheard at the wedding, it seems you two have quite a bad reputation. Max, you've been throwing your weight around at work, doing haphazard jobs. And Lily, you've been putting down other women, flaunting your looks in marriage. I can see why people wouldn't want to give wedding gifts to people like you. Hey sis, stay out of this, Max snapped, clearly annoyed by Mia's comment. I sighed deeply. You too? It's not just me you haven't been considerate of. It's everyone around you. The wedding expenses are your own doing. Please pay them yourselves. Desperately, Max pleaded, Mom, I'm in a bind here. Lily can't control her spending, and even her parents have started to take advantage of me. Lily's love of money isn't exactly a new revelation, Mom. Plus, having seen Lily, I can easily imagine her parents behaving the same way. Please, Mom, think about helping us. Give us some money. I sternly replied, You were the one who said I'm an elite, and it'll be a piece of cake. You told me to stop making payments, didn't you? And didn't you say that we were severing our ties? I have no obligation to give you any more money. Mom, don't call me Mom. I don't want to be called that by someone who has only ever seen me as a cash cow. To be honest, I'd like you to repay me for the wedding and the engagement party, but I'll write it off as a settlement payment. Now please leave, I declared firmly. Max, who had looked shocked, now had a malicious look on his face. Hey, are you really okay with this, Mom? Cutting ties with us like that? How will you spend your old age without a husband? Don't you want to see your grandchild? He challenged. Before I could respond, Mia intervened. Don't worry about that. I will be by Mom's side, And what can an unsuccessful comic artist like you do? You can't even have children. Shut up, Max, she retorted sharply. Max, frothing at the mouth with anger, sneered, "Ah, so scary. Sure, you mock me as a failed manga artist or an otaku, yet my manga was among the top-selling Kyoto manga this year. Did you know it's set to be turned into an anime and movie next year? Safe to say, I'm in a much better financial state than you and your debts." At this point, Max noticed something. "Hey, is that this? Oh, you noticed." "Yes, that's what's happening," Mia confirmed, flashing the ring on her left ring finger. "I'm getting married to my editor. He's a big shot at a major publishing house, a real high flyer. So we can take care of Mom. We don't need you anyway. We never intended to have our children care for us." "Thanks, Mia. We're having a wedding, but we'll handle everything ourselves. We'll invite Mom, Max, but you don't need to come," Mia concluded, leaving Max stunned. "I said, did you get it now? Never bother us again." With those words, Mia and I steadily pushed Max towards the front door. "Please, Mom, and you too." "Sis," Max pleaded, but it was time to make a stand. Then something came to mind. "What are you going to give us money for?" Max's hopeful expression turned sour as I continued. "That director at your wedding? Turns out, I didn't know, but he's a client of my company. It seems your hiring and all your undeserved privileges were out of consideration for me. I told them to stop that, though." "What? You didn't hear about this? Stop it, please. Handle it on your own. Now goodbye." With finality, Mia and I pushed Max outside and firmly locked the door. Max made a fuss outside, but after ignoring him for a while, it became quiet. A year passed since then. Right after that incident, I sold a house to avoid Max and Lily's visit and bought an apartment with elderly services for my old age. According to a neighbor from my condo, Max and Lily showed up and created a scene, asking why I wasn't there. Hence, I believe my decision was the right one. As for Max and Lily, they'd abandoned their dream of a luxury high-rise apartment and now live in a cramped space. Max, it seems, was demoted after his actions were reviewed. Perhaps hurt from falling from his elite status, Max worsened his attitude towards others. Surprisingly, he's not fired yet. Lily, who quit her job upon marriage, continued to splurge for a while, but their funds quickly ran out. Even with their debts, Lily's luxurious habits did not change, and her parents continued to demand money. Apparently, they quarrel daily. I hope the two learn the hardship of earning money and appreciate the people around them and grow up, though that might be too much to ask from them. I still maintain a good relationship with Mia. Mia's husband is a good man who treats me well, and they are expecting a baby. I plan to spoil my lovely daughter and grandchild, and looking forward to it keeps me working every day.
Hi, Eric. Mommy, you're home. Yay, where's Daddy? Eric felt uneasy when he heard this question. He looked down and said, I'm not sure." "What's wrong, sweetie? Are you keeping secrets with Mommy?" Eric didn't say anything but continued to look down at the floor nervously. I could tell something wasn't right. I called my husband, David. "Where are you?" "I came for a vacation with our son." I ended the call and we quickly packed our bags and left the house. "Hi, my name is Caroline and I'm 40 years old. I'm married to David, who's 42 years old. We've been married for the last 10 years. David and I used to work at the same office, which is how we met. We fell in love and got married. We were a happy couple. 2 years after David and I got married, our son Eric was born, and our family felt complete. Eric is now 8 years old. Soon after we got married, David found a better job opportunity at a different company and decided to switch. I continued working at the same company, and over time, I got promoted to a senior position. This new role required me to travel for a few days each month for business trips. When Eric was 3 years old, I was offered another promotion at work. However, it came with a condition. I would need to travel for business reasons a few days each month. I hesitated to accept because Eric was still very young, and I didn't want to leave him alone. But David reassured me. "Don't worry, honey. I'll take care of Eric." "Are you sure? Eric is still so little." "Absolutely. He's my son too. And it's just for a few days." "Okay then, I'll take the promotion. David always supported my work. He would take care of Eric when I had to go on these trips. I was really thankful to David for being so caring and supportive. Everything was going well until one day my father-in-law called. "Hey David, I've been thinking about stepping down from the business. I'm getting older and can't handle the stress anymore. Is everything okay, Dad?" "Yeah, everything's fine. I'm just realizing I'm getting older, you know. It's time for you to take over the business." "David, this isn't unexpected. I've let you have your way with everything until now, but this is something you need to do for the family." "Dad, you can't make me do this. I'm not making you do anything. Just consider it. How long will you keep working a regular job? The business will give you flexibility later in life." "But Dad, you're my only heir. If you don't want to take over the company, I'll have to sell it because I can't handle it anymore." I didn't intend for it to sound like that. "All right, then how about you start by working here for a month and see how it goes?" "But Dad, you've been running the business so smoothly for years. I'm worried I won't be able to manage it as well as you." "You'll learn as you go along. I didn't know anything about business until I started doing it myself." "Okay, Dad, I'll give my notice at work and wrap things up there." Even though David enjoyed his job, he knew he would have to take over the family business eventually. He was prepared for it, but he didn't expect it to happen so soon. After David joined the family business, I started noticing changes in his behavior. He would come home late, spend evenings on his phone by himself, and often be away on weekends. This went on for a few months. Eventually, I couldn't ignore it anymore and decided to talk to him about it. "David, is everything okay with you?" "Yeah, what's up?" "I've noticed a change in your behavior over the past few months." "What change?" "I don't understand what you're talking about." I wanted to address the issue so we could work on it together, but David seemed to brush off any problems. I became frustrated with his dismissive attitude. "Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. You come home late almost every day. And when you do come home early, instead of spending time with me or Eric, you're glued to your phone." David responded firmly, "I'm busy. It's not like when I worked for a company and could finish at 7 p.m. This is my business now. I have to give it attention even after I get home. I need to coordinate with other departments over the phone." "What about the weekends?" "Yes, sometimes we have to work on weekends too." Feeling overwhelmed, I left the room to calm down. While David's reasons made sense, I couldn't shake off my concerns. I could sense a growing distance between us, though I couldn't quite explain it to David. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and allow him time to adjust to the business. Besides, he was a loving father to Eric and took good care of him when I was away. He even made sure to take Eric on small vacations during my business trips. As time passed, David became even busier with the business. Sometimes he wouldn't come home at all. Despite living under the same roof, we hardly communicated. I started wondering if my work was causing this distance between us. I often felt lonely, with no one to confide in. My parents were elderly, and I didn't want to burden them with my problems. I had lost touch with most of my friends as I became preoccupied with family and work. David's presence in my life seemed minimal. My only solace was Eric. Although he was too young to understand my troubles, spending time with him brought me joy and relief. However, I began to notice changes in Eric. His grades were dropping, and he was spending excessive time playing video games. David spoiled him with expensive video games and toys, which only seemed to worsen the situation. The next time David brought home expensive video games for Eric, I couldn't help but feel concerned. "I disagree, David. Eric already has plenty of video games and toys. Adding another one isn't necessary." "What do you mean? Can't I give gifts to my own son anymore? What's the problem?" "Eric's grades have been slipping, and he's constantly distracted by video games. It's not good for his development. He's my son. He'll figure it out on his own. You don't need to interfere. He's my son too, David. I want to make sure he's raised to be educated and responsible." "Are you implying that I'm irresponsible? I've been looking after Eric since he was 3 years old while you were away on your business trips." I was taken aback by his accusation. He had willingly taken on the responsibility of caring for Eric, and as his father, it was his duty too. "But it was you who encouraged me to take the promotion and said you'd take care of Eric." "Yes, I did. You should appreciate my support instead of constantly criticizing me." "I've always appreciated your support for me. That's why I'm still here, despite your distant behavior." His words hit me hard, and I couldn't hold back my tears. Please don't try to paint yourself as the victim here. I lost my temper and yelled at him, I'm done with you. I don't feel any affection or gratitude towards you anymore. Taking care of Eric was your responsibility as a parent. I don't owe you anything for that. David shouted back, you're so ungrateful. Women like you can never be happy or keep their husbands happy. It was the first time David had spoken to me like this. Even when we weren't getting along, he had never been cruel. But now, he seemed like a different person. His words cut deep, and I couldn't help but cry. I locked myself in the bathroom and sobbed uncontrollably. Eric overheard our argument. When he saw me locked in the bathroom for a long time, he started knocking on the door, crying, Mommy, please come out. Eventually, I washed my face, unlocked the door, and hugged him. Mommy, I was scared when you stayed in there for so long. I'm sorry, honey. I was just taking a long bath. But your hair is still dry. I chuckled and pinched his cheeks. You're quite clever, aren't you? How about spaghetti for dinner? Eric's eyes lit up. Yes, spaghetti. His excitement brought a smile to my face, pushing aside my worries. Meanwhile, David remained on the couch, engrossed in his phone. I prepared dinner for Eric and tucked him into bed. With an early flight for my business trip the next morning, I packed my bags and left a note with my travel details on David's desk. Since our relationship had grown distant, I always left a note with my travel plans for David so he could make arrangements for Eric or take him to my in-laws' house the next day. I went on my scheduled trip, but the recent arguments with David weighed heavily on my mind. I couldn't focus on my work. By the second day, I started feeling feverish and weak, so I decided to cut my trip short. I contacted my manager and explained that I was feeling unwell. They arranged for me to return home immediately. When I got back, I was looking forward to spending quality time with my son. However, when I arrived home, I found the front door locked and the lights off. I used my spare key to unlock the door and went inside. The house was dark, so I turned on the lights and headed upstairs to Eric's room. There, I found Eric playing with his video games on his bed. Hey Eric, sweetheart. What are you doing here? And why are all the lights off in the house? Excited to see me, Eric ran over. Mommy, you're back. Yay, where's Daddy? Eric seemed uneasy when I asked about his dad. He avoided eye contact and mumbled, I don't know. When did he leave, sweetie? I'm not sure, Mommy. Dad told me not to say anything. What do you mean, honey? What's going on? Why are you keeping secrets from Mommy? Eric remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor nervously. I could tell something wasn't right. Worried, I called my husband. David, where are you? I came for a vacation with our son. I was shocked and devastated. David had been lying to me, and Eric had heard it all. I hung up the phone, staring at David in disbelief. Eric started crying. After calming him down, Eric confessed everything to me. It was heart-wrenching to hear. Mommy, whenever you went on a trip, Daddy left me alone in the house. What? He continued sobbing as I held him close. Sweetheart, how long has Daddy been leaving you alone? When I was little, Daddy took care of me and never left me alone. But now he locks me inside the house. He leaves food in the fridge for me and gives me video games to play. And when does your father come back? Daddy comes home late at night and leaves again in the morning, Eric replied. I couldn't believe what my son had been going through while I was away. I felt guilty for leaving him in David's care. Why didn't you tell me, sweetheart? At first, Dad would leave me alone for a few hours, but he always brought back lots of chocolates and toys for me. But now he's gone for the whole day. He made me promise not to tell you anything. I hate seeing him cry like this. Okay, calm down now. Mommy's here. I'm sorry, Mommy, for getting the new video games. I kept my promise and didn't tell you anything. I'm sorry, sweetheart, that you had to go through all of this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What kind of father would do such a thing? David was rewarding Eric for keeping this terrible secret. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't bear to stay in that house any longer or let my child be around such a man. We packed our bags and left immediately. I hired an investigation agency to look into David's actions. After dropping Eric off at my aunt's house, I went to David's parents and told them everything. My mother-in-law couldn't believe that David could do such things. Caroline, please don't rush into anything. Maybe there's some misunderstanding. It's not wise to make such a big decision based solely on what Eric says. He's just a child. What do you mean? I know you're trying to help, but I can't even think about talking to David right now. How can I trust him after all this? I was too angry to grasp her suggestion properly, even though she probably meant well. Do you really believe Eric would make up something like this? And why would David lie to me about being on vacation with Eric? Well, maybe he was just caught up with work. I lost my patience and decided to lay everything out. This incident isn't isolated. Your son has been distant since he joined the family business. He comes home late, hardly spends time with Eric, and often spends his weekends away. Are you suggesting that all of this is because David joined the family business? My father-in-law interrupted. Brianna, let her speak, he said. Caroline is right. I never imagined David would change like this after joining the business. Some of my senior employees mentioned David's growing closeness with his assistant. What? Why did he tell me about this? I brushed it off as workplace gossip. People tend to enjoy spreading rumors like that, my father-in-law explained. I never thought David would do something like this. He loved you and Eric so much. I should have taken it seriously. I regret it now. Please forgive me, Caroline, he pleaded. I sat there in shock, unable to say anything. Brianna looked equally stunned. They both seemed devastated. David had always been seen as the perfect son, husband, and father. He had let everyone down. I couldn't blame my father-in-law because I, too, had never suspected David of having an affair despite our relationship growing colder. I attributed it to our busy schedules. I had foolishly hoped that once Eric grew up and we were free from parental duties, we'd be happy together again in our retirement. But now, everything felt shattered. After leaving my in-laws' house, I started receiving calls from David. I assumed my in-laws had spoken to him. I ignored his calls and blocked his number. I stayed with my aunt for a few days while searching for a new place to live. Eventually, the investigation agency sent their reports, confirming my suspicions. David had indeed been having an affair with his assistant, Lily. He would skip work and spend the day at her place whenever I was away. I hired a lawyer and sent divorce papers along with the evidence I received from the agency. It turned out that Lily was a single mother to a 5-year-old girl. She had been divorced by her ex-husband due to an extramarital affair during her pregnancy. When she applied for her job, she portrayed herself as a victim, claiming she divorced her husband because he cheated on her while she was pregnant. Despite her lack of qualifications, my father-in-law had given her a job out of sympathy. She deceived everyone in the office with her false story. It seemed she had also used the same tale on David. However, the investigation revealed her true nature. Further digging uncovered details about her ex-husband. He had divorced Lily without providing any alimony or child support, alleging that the baby was not his. A DNA test confirmed his claim. I forwarded all these details to David through my lawyer. According to my lawyer, David was devastated by the evidence and ended things with Lily. He accused her of breaking into our house. David wasn't ready to let go of our marriage. He loved Eric deeply and couldn't bear the thought of losing him. He admitted to my lawyer that he had been influenced by Lily and begged for another chance. He also confessed that it was Lily's idea to leave Eric alone at home, mirroring her own situation with her daughter. If it had only been me hurt by David's actions, I might have considered giving him another chance. But now it was a matter of my child's safety and upbringing. I couldn't raise Eric with a father who would bribe him into lying. After enduring so much pain, I was determined to get a divorce. It wasn't just a matter of days or months. David had betrayed my trust for years, yet I had never doubted his loyalty. I couldn't forgive him for breaking that trust. I refused any settlement other than divorce. My father-in-law apologized for David's actions and supported me throughout this ordeal. The news of David's affair and our divorce spread like wildfire throughout the office, leading to gossip and speculation. Unable to bear the shame, my father-in-law removed David and Lily from the company. He took charge again for a few years before selling the company to another businessman for a substantial sum. David's name was removed from his parents' will, and instead, Eric inherited his grandfather's legacy. David was disowned by his parents as he had shattered their trust too. David relocated to another part of the city where he faced judgment from the community for his infidelity with his assistant. Meanwhile, I transferred to a different department where I didn't have to travel as much. This allowed me to balance my work and home life more effectively. I hired a full-time nanny to care for Eric, ensuring he received the attention and care he deserved. I'm considering leaving my job in a few years. I've saved enough for my retirement and want to enjoy life to the fullest with my son. My greatest wish is for Eric to grow up into an educated and responsible individual, and I'll do everything in my power to ensure he receives the best upbringing possible.